An entitled Karen gets turned away at a plasma donation center after her vitals and tests come back saying that it's not safe for her to donate. But as a result, this entitled Karen goes nuts, claiming that we're being racist by turning her away. And I'm simply blown away by the way this entitled Karen acted. Here's what happened. Okay, so I work at a plasma donation center in the United States. And for those of you who don't know, you get paid for donating plasma here. So our plasma centers tend to attract a lot of interesting characters, including people who feel that they are entitled to being paid. Now, let me get a few things straight. You are not entitled to get paid, nor is payment guaranteed. Plasma donation can be dangerous. If you are temporarily deferred for whatever reason, it is for your safety. And unlike some store, we don't have to put up with your BS. If you yell and scream at us and throw a tantrum, we can and will ban you for life. Now, this lady, who is the Karen of the story that we encountered, did not understand any of the above rules. She didn't understand anything about anything and chose to be angry about it instead of listening to what we told her. Now, this Karen was being screened by my coworker. Screening is where we check people's vitals and take a blood sample, and all of these measurements have an acceptable range where it is safe to donate. Some vitals can be taken exactly once. Any more and it would be considered testing by compliance. So if your vitals are still out of range after the retake, well, tough cookies, come back tomorrow. So my coworker retook Karen's vitals and said to her, "I'm sorry ma'am, this measurement is still out of range. You'll have to try again tomorrow." Now this entitled Karen did not like that. She said to my coworker, "What? That is crazy. I'll miss out on the promotion." And for reference, our center has a promotion for new donors. The coworker says, "I know, I'm so sorry." But Karen says, "Can't you take the measurement again?" My coworker then says to her, "Unfortunately, no. We can only take this measurement twice." To which the Karen says, "What? That's crazy. Why not?" And even though my coworker tried to explain that these were the rules and we have to follow them, Karen refused to understand. In fact, even going as far as measuring different things that we were looking at to try and figure out what it is that was way too high. The entitled Karen then said, "But I saw the other day that one of your coworkers let a man donate when he was 2 points below his measurements." My coworker then said, "I don't know anything about that. We have to follow the rules." Well, this entitled Karen then said, "I want to talk to who's in charge right now in private." Now, before my manager arrived to talk to her, this woman actually got on the phone to talk crap about us to one of her friends. She then claimed that the other day, they let a white man go through when he was 2 points below. Yes, you heard that right. She somehow made it about race. Now, here's the thing. We don't defer people based on race. We defer people based on whether or not they're within the safe range of measurement. If we let anyone through who was out of range and they had a reaction, they could easily sue the pants off us. My manager arrived and took her into a private room to talk, and shocker, she explained exactly the same thing my coworker did. "We only take this measurement twice and you will have to come back tomorrow." Well, when the Karen demanded why the man from the other day before was let through when he was 2 points low, my manager simply reiterated, "Ma'am, we do not let anyone through with an out of range measurement." This Karen then looked shocked. She said to my manager, "Are you calling me a liar?" To which my manager said, "I think you may have misunderstood or misheard what was going on. The medical historian was probably warning him that the measurement was 2 points away from being too low. We let people know when a measurement is close to being too low so that they can prevent themselves from actually being too low next time. Do you understand?" Now, despite claiming that she understood, the Karen immediately got back on their phone with her friend and said, "I don't understand. This is crazy." And then she left in a huff. Now, unfortunately, despite myself and all of my other coworkers begging my manager to ban this Karen, she has not been banned. But know this, if you donated plasma recently and the story sounds a little too familiar, you better be on your best behavior the next time you come in, because not every manager is as kind. We do not have to put up with your BS for a single second. Oh man, I love this story so much because honestly, why are you gonna act like that? The numbers are not gonna lie and these people are not gonna pull something and be like, "Oh yeah, we're doing this based on race." That's crazy and super dumb, man. So good for you guys for the way you handled this, because the way this Karen was acting was super inappropriate. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for not giving my parents a loan for their new restaurant? As I really just don't think they'll ever pay me back if I do give them money. Here's what's going on. Okay, I want to start off by saying that I need some thoughts on this because there's a lot of backstory to go through. I've been working since I was 14 years old and had an account with my mom where all the money was deposited. My parents got their first house when I was 18 and they used my money for the down payment without asking me or letting me know until I asked about that money closer to college. Now, I thought it would be used for my college. At that time, I didn't have a car or my own phone, since they were very strict. I'm now in my mid-20s and I've since moved out with my boyfriend, saving up to get our own house. I only have a few $1,000s saved up since I got too spend happy with the financial freedom. I also furnished my room, got a car and a phone, and I have some cats. Also, I've got college debt, so there's that as well. My parents asked me recently for a loan from my saved up money, and while I was on the fence about it, ultimately I declined to help them out. They also acted very desperate, like they needed it urgently. They claimed they would pay me back, but I just don't trust them. They also tried every trick in the book, saying that I owe them and that they raised me, while also sprinkling in some guilt tripping and basically the whole 9 yards. Ever since then, they haven't contacted me, and I've definitely not contacted them either. So seriously, am I in the wrong for this? Was I the jerk for not giving them money? What should I do? Okay, honestly, maybe this is a hot take, but no, you're not the jerk. Your parents have already proven to not be trustworthy by taking your money as a kid and using that for a down payment. Like, dude, what's going on right now? That sucks, dude. You literally worked for that money and they stole it. They used it on something you did not give them permission to use it on. You were going to use that for college and they step in and they're like, oh yeah, sorry, we're going to use it for our house instead. Like, screw that. That's so inappropriate. So no, in my opinion, they absolutely have lost the right to have any kind of like money from you because they're clearly not trustworthy and it seems like they're just trying to get a quick buck out of you, and that is really not fair. My younger brother is insanely jealous of me, constantly insulting me and being aggressive and showing some absolute resentment towards me as a person. And I'm honestly at a point where I just don't know how to repair this relationship because right now I feel incredibly lost. Here's what's going on. My family immigrated to the United States in 2009. I was around 4 or 5 years old at the time, and my youngest brother was born here. I grew up in poverty during those early years, but my brother was raised in a more financially stable environment. Because of this, I've always had to hustle and work hard chasing the American dream, if you will, while he, on the other hand, didn't experience the same pressures. Over the last several years, however, I've noticed troubling patterns in his behavior. He's becoming increasingly competitive, insecure, and hostile, going out of his way to try and one-up me in everything. He refuses to share even the smallest things like food, even though I always bring or buy him things when I go out. I've tried to be the caring older brother, giving him gifts, giving him rides, and including him in my life even when he's rude. But in return, I get insults, aggression, and resentment. And honestly, I get nothing. Not a single gift, a card, or anything. There have even been physical altercations. One time he initiated a fist fight while I was peacefully working on my laptop, just because he felt compared to me. He constantly tries to tear me down, especially when I'm in the spotlight, which unfortunately happens a lot since I've always tried to show love and care to others, and people respond positively to that. He sees it as competition, not kindness. The family loves me when I visit because I believe every heart responds to tender love. The emotional imbalance is especially frustrating because my parents often tell me I'm doing too much for him, and it's heartbreaking to know he wouldn't do the same for me. I've been dealing with this dynamic for the past 2 years. I've done everything I can to support him, but the bitterness hasn't gone away. I suspect it may come from deep-rooted jealousy or self-esteem issues, but it doesn't make the situation any easier. Ironically, despite his resentment, he is often the one who gets more from our parents materially. For instance, he got a $3,000 e-bike recently, while my most expensive birthday gift was a PS5, which I'm so thankful for. And honestly, shout out to my parents for making it a surprise. So would anyone out there have any idea about this? How do I maintain or repair a sibling relationship when it feels completely one-sided? At what point do you stop giving so much even when it's family? And how do you protect your peace in situations like this? I want to either repair this relationship with my brother so it is less one-sided, or learn how to emotionally detach from living in the same home, because right now I don't know what to do. Yeah, your brother's being incredibly stupid right now. For reference, the original poster is 21 years old and their brother's 15, but my god, that is definitely old enough to know better than to treat someone like that. He is disrespectful all the time and still gets these amazing gifts on a consistent basis from the parents. And honestly, in my opinion, the second someone shows me how they actually are, I'm gonna believe them. I'm gonna say, okay, this is how you really feel, and I'm not gonna try and convince myself otherwise. So if this guy's aggressively insulting you and he's showing resentment, then in my opinion, that's how he actually feels about you. This isn't some facade that needs to be healed. This is actually how your brother feels. And just like anybody else who would treat you that way, if I was in your shoes, I would cut them off. I would personally say, I'm sorry, but I can't help you out anymore. You're being really aggressive and rude to me, and I don't appreciate that. Because guess what? You don't deserve that. This kind of behavior should absolutely slam the door shut on anything you have to offer him. Because in my opinion, that is the only way to make this stop, whether he likes it or not. Am I the jerk for not letting my roommate use my Nintendo Switch, as he literally started playing on it without my permission? Here's what's going on. Okay, so I'm a 21-year-old male and I live with my roommate, who we will call Dave, in a college apartment. I bought a Nintendo Switch last month with money from my part-time job. It cost me $300 and I was really excited about it. Now Dave doesn't have a job and his parents send him money for rent and food. He's always borrowing things from me and never asked permission first. In fact, last week I caught him using my laptop without asking me first. So yesterday I come home from work and Dave is playing on my Switch. I was kind of annoyed and I told him to ask me next time before using my stuff. But he just said to me, "Chill dude, it's just a gaming console." But I said to him, "Yeah, and it's my game console that I paid for." He then got defensive and said that I was being selfish since we're roommates and we should share everything apparently. But I told him if he wants to play video games, he can buy his own console. After I said this, he's now giving me the silent treatment and told our mutual friends that I'm being a jerk over something stupid. A couple of them even said that I should just let him use it since we live together. So seriously, am I being unreasonable here? I feel like I should get to decide who uses my expensive electronics, because at this point, I'm seriously pissed off. No, you're not the jerk at all. This guy is completely selfish. He clearly is one of those people who just uses anything in front of him and asks for forgiveness later and doesn't even consider the person he's taking from. Like if I was in your shoes, I would absolutely be locking that console down, because what begins as him just like borrowing the console to play on it quickly becomes him being like, "Oh no, this is my game console, I own it." And then you don't see it ever again. Like that easily could happen. And I also just really hate this guy's attitude. Like seriously, can we talk about that for a second? He's so dismissive and just so nonchalant about this, even though it's clearly a big deal to the original poster, and I think it is too. So no, you're not the jerk for telling him this, and honestly, I hope it gets better sooner than later, because it sounds like your roommate's incredibly selfish and this is going to be a reoccurring problem. Am I the jerk for no longer wanting to be responsible for my sister and her kids after I've spent several years supporting them and honestly just trying to be there for them? Because as of right now, I'm burnt out and I just don't know what to do. Here's what's going on. Okay, I want to start off by saying that I lived with them for years throughout her and her husband's toxic and awful marriage. I mainly stayed to protect the kids and do what I could to protect them from seeing the awful things that were going on, namely the verbal, emotional, financial, and sometimes physical mistreatment. After living separately, I moved back in with them to ease the financial burden on all of us, with full intentions on repairing mistakes made in my 20s and stacking up money. Well, 1 month in, the husband abandoned us to go halfway across the country to Florida and took their vehicle with him. I didn't have a car at the time, and part of my repair plan was trying to get another one. Once he left, my sister and I had to figure out how to pay all the bills and provide for the kids, swap off on childcare, and also find rides to work. And this was extremely exhausting. But 6 months later, this guy came back, and he told her that we're all going to Florida and that we're gonna live there instead, claiming that things would get better there. But I begged her, please don't do this. We had finally started to gain a little ground where we were, and we were getting somewhere and surviving peacefully. But she didn't listen, and because of the financial wreck I was still in, I really had no choice but to go with them. Well, we were homeless for 7 months. We lived out of a hotel for the last half of it, scraping by on nickels and dimes. But thankfully, the husband finally listened when we suggested going back to North Carolina near my family where I'm from. And when we get there, we had a house within a week, despite spending months trying to tell him that we should do this, but to no avail. So I restart trying to make a plan for myself to be independent and be able to support myself. All the bills are split into thirds, and I got a really good job and started to see a light at the end of the tunnel. And then at the end of April, early May, her husband once again fell into his old patterns, only this time they strayed majorly into the physical aspect of things. Well, long story short, me, my sister, and the kids all hid at my family's house while she got a restraining order. We then had to leave our house for good because of the horrible landlord and the house problems that were ignored. And now us minus the husband are living at my parents' house. He won't send any money, he won't pay anything, and has seen his kids maybe twice since May, which now leaves me stuck financially supporting myself, my sister, and her kids, because my sister doesn't have a full-time job since she's been a stay-at-home mom. For nearly 5 years, I've been advising her to leave the relationship, or at the very least, insist on working full-time, just so she can never allow herself to be financially dependent on him again. But here's the thing, she has consistently decided not to listen to me. Her husband destroyed their credit, and we can't get approved for any rentals because of that. I want to just leave and get my own place, which I could easily do, and my parents are telling me it's more responsibility than theirs to support her, and basically forbidding me to leave, when I've been doing the supporting for way longer than I should have. They have helped us over the years, but my stupid idiot self just kept staying in the situation because I would feel like a horrible person for abandoning not only her, but especially my 3 younger nephews who are all about 5 years old. I know the obvious choice is to take care of myself, but it makes me feel extremely guilty and like I'm abandoning them just like their dad did, and I don't know how to get past that. Another reason I can't make the leap is because my family will not help me in any way, shape, or form if it's needed in the future, and I'm really scared of having zero support support system and being completely on my own. So honestly, would I be the jerk for no longer wanting to be responsible for this? Because at this point, I'm so frustrated. Okay, first of all, this is some heavy stuff. I'm so sorry you're going through this. It's clear you've had a really rough past in life, and this is just not fair for you. But honestly, I think you said it yourself. You know the right decision, and you know what you want to do. And from the sounds of it, it doesn't seem like you're happy living with your sister any longer. Now, I do need to say that I think there's a big distinction between the husband leaving and you leaving, because the husband absolutely is a piece of garbage for doing so, whereas if you left, I don't think it would be for the same reasons at all. You're not walking out on the family, you're trying to start your own family. You're literally trying to live your life, and you can't do that strapped to your sister all the time. So honestly, I don't think you would be the jerk at all for walking away and trying to set up your own life, because I think you deserve to have your own life and have your own peace. My best friend's fiance grabbed my butt out of nowhere, and now I'm considering not showing up to their wedding, even though I'm involved in nearly every aspect of the planning process. Here's what's going on. So my best friend is supposed to be getting married to her boyfriend of 7 years in November of this year. Since I have worked in event planning and have a wholesale number, I've been helping them with large amounts of tasks for the wedding, namely the bachelorette party planning, the party favors, the wholesale flowers, making a wedding piñata, their guest book, the cake, etc. Because I'm an artist and was so excited for their wedding, I took on a lot of tasks that they would have otherwise had to farm out and pay for separately. I went to visit last week as I was in town for a separate event, and they let me crash in their apartment so we could spend more time together. I had a great visit with my friends while in town, but I had to stay an extra day than planned due to weather making it unsafe to drive. Because of this, her fiance offered to take me to breakfast that morning at 9 o'clock, which would be before I got on the road as my best friend was already at work. Now, for a bit of background, my best friend goes to work at 6 o'clock in the morning every single day, and her fiance works from home. Anyways, I said bye to my friend when she left for work, and then I slept in until 9 o'clock in the morning. After waking up, her fiance immediately started acting very strange. He was hanging out in his underwear, and he insisted I pick out clothing for him to wear that day. Now, I have a history of distrusting men due to previous relationships, and I do still have some PTSD, especially when it comes to my personal space and boundaries. So at first, I figured I was just overreacting. He then cornered me in the closet, still in his underwear, and while it was extremely strange, I just removed myself from the situation by just quickly slipping past him, being sure not to make any physical contact. After that, he kept weirdly following me around the apartment as I deflated the air mattress I had slept on, always weirdly standing over me. It was freaking me out enough that I just stopped and insisted we head to breakfast. Now, breakfast was normal, and we talked all about the wedding and his plans to surprise my best friend with her wedding ring. He then drove us back to the apartment, and we loaded up my things into the car. I went back to grab my last few things from the house, and that's when it got really weird. He kept insisting that I stay longer and hang out. I questioned him, asking if he was just bored or why he would want me to stay, reiterating that I was anxious about getting home as I was supposed to leave the day before. He started at 2 hours and then 1 more hour, and then just asked me if I would stay until about 11:15. I looked past him and it was like 10:45, so I asked him what he would want me to stay to do for like 30 minutes. He then said anything you want with a super creepy smirk. Well, that sent up many red flags, and I grabbed my last stuff and I headed towards the door of their apartment. He sounded kind of offended and asked if I was going to leave without saying goodbye. Now, I faltered as I didn't want to offend my best friend's person, so I turned back around and I said, of course not, and he went in for a hug, which I didn't pull away from, but as soon as his arms were around me, his hand went right to my butt and he patted it twice. When I began to pull away because that made me incredibly uncomfortable, he fully grabbed my left butt cheek and squeezed it. I went into flight mode and I made my way to the door again. Well, he beat me there and he put his hand on the top of the door, preventing me from opening it. He then repeated, "You're not gonna tell her, are you?" several times until I was finally able to get the door open and leave. My best friend then called me as I pulled out of their apartment complex because he texted her that I had just left. Now, I've been kind of in shock since it all happened and made an appointment with my therapist and talked through it just a little bit. She thinks he's trying to get out of the marriage, but it all seems to be falling on deaf ears for my best friend. She can't seem to believe that he'd behave like that, and after talking with her more, it seems like he's gaslighting her into thinking that it was just a misunderstanding. I talked to my other best friend from that area, and apparently my best friend's fiance did a similar thing to her at a house party a few months back. I've known my other best friend and her fiance for 7 years, and even I find it hard to believe that he behaved like that, as I've never seen any warning signs before. But with that, I need to know if I'm overreacting. Her bridal shower and bachelorette are set to take place in August, which is less than a month away, and I'm just not sure if I can take part in the festivities after what happened to me. I'm seeking any advice on what I should do, or if I'm the jerk for boycotting the entirety of their wedding. If I do decide to not partake, does anyone have any advice on how to tell her about it, or what I should say? Since I was taking on such a big role in the preparation and the wedding planning, I still feel like a jerk jerk, and it feels like I'm going to lose one of my best college friends. I'm honestly feeling really lost, and I seriously don't know what to do. Holy crap, no, you are not overreacting. Your best friend's fiance did something to you that was completely inappropriate and unacceptable. There's never a situation where this is okay, and honestly, this is a deal breaker in my opinion. And yeah, you put a lot of work into this wedding, and you've done a lot of the planning, but my god, this guy is worse than a piece of crap. He is someone who clearly targets women and treats them like this, and somehow still gets away with it. And you're just one of many girls probably, besides your other friend, that have been touched inappropriately by this weirdo. So no, you're not the jerk here, and you're definitely not overreacting. Not showing up and saying, I'm not going to be a part of this, and then explaining why to anybody asking, is absolutely within your right. And sure, you might lose a friend over this, but honestly, I would not want to be friends with someone who excuses this kind of behavior, especially when you're not the first woman he's done this to.
We hired a new guy and we were showing him around the office after his interview. He took the first sip out of a new pot of coffee and tossed it to remake it. He didn't realize who I was as he rose to emperor status before his first day. This is the fastest rise and fall in employment history. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell to turn on notifications. I don't remember this guy's name, but I do remember many of our local staff knew him from the neighborhood. He came in and mentioned, Jay said to stop by for an interview. I had answered the door and took him to the office manager. We were a family-owned business and did everything face-to-face, not online. He comes in and meets my office manager. They have a conversation about past work experience, how he operates, etc. I am in the room, just up the steps, making a pot of coffee. I am about 15 to 20 feet from them and I can hear everything. He's a little over the top, but I figure he was trying to impress us. Our office had 3 floors. The top floor was an employee break room, kitchen, shower, and 3 desks/workstations. The manager is happy with what he hears from the guy as far as work goes, tells him he's hired, and tells him he'll show him the office and introduce him to everyone. The coffee was done. I called down to the manager because I knew he'd want a cup, and offered the new guy a cup too. I get a cup, my manager gets a cup, and the new guy gets a cup. The new guy pitches a fit because he doesn't like strong coffee. He pours his out in the sink, gets the pot, and pours that into the sink. The manager looks at me as if to ask which one of us should kill this guy. We're a 24/7 operation, and we all love our coffee. It's our lifeblood, and we all make it the exact same way. In fact, it was the office manager that taught me how to make coffee when I started drinking it. The new guy goes on a rant about how weaker coffee has more caffeine and how things are going to change, and he'll teach me the right way to do things. Note, lighter roasts of coffee are higher in caffeine. The longer you roast the coffee beans, the more the caffeine burns out. How strong you brew your coffee is a matter of taste. I let him brew a pot. It looked like lemonade. It had a yellow tint to it, and it did not resemble any coffee I've ever seen. The new guy held it up to show us, and we could clearly see him through the pot. FYI, I don't care if that's what he liked. It was his condescending attitude that raised flags. He's no longer over the top, he's now obnoxious. My manager tells him he should probably shut up if he really wants the job. He brushes off the manager and tells him we'll learn a lot working with him. I said, "Wanna bet?" He took offense to my tone and laid into me. It ended with a, "Who the F are you?" My manager said, "He's the owner. So, he's your boss." I looked at the manager and told him he's half right. No way do I want this guy working for me, and then I fired him. He was literally hired and fired in less than 15 minutes. We talked about this guy for years. Truth be told, I'm glad we found out he was not a good fit before he caused bad feelings among the crew. So am I the jerk for firing this guy over a pot of coffee? I love how this was set up so that even us, the audience, didn't know that he was the owner until the very last second. A lot of times in stories like this, they'll tell us at the very start, I've owned this business for this many years and then I saw this guy and it was crazy. But this was the perfect setup. And I totally get what he means, that it's not really about the coffee, it's about this guy's attitude. If he's going to act like that and have that much of an ego on day one, it's probably going to bleed into everything else that they do. It sounds like he has some sort of elitist superiority complex. Maybe he thinks that this job is beneath him, because sometimes when people have those type of thoughts, they end up acting like this. It's just pretty wild that during the same time as getting an interview, you would say to somebody, "Who the F are you?" in front of the manager who just gave you the job. A lot of people asked, how did this guy react when he got fired? The original poster said he was speechless and dumbfounded. This was between 1990 and 1995, and he knew my dad's name, but my dad had health issues and retired in 1982. Most people called me by my dad's name or his dad's name, not realizing I wasn't a junior. Maybe that's why he didn't believe that I was the head person in charge. Whatever his issue was, we didn't want a guy like that working for us. He would have poisoned the crew. In response to somebody else asking the exact same question, the original poster responded by saying, speechless. He had a deer in the headlights expression. He looked up at the manager who worked for me and asked if this was for real. My manager looked at him and said, yeah, dude, you screwed up royally. We are all still friends, and I called the manager at this point when the post first hit Reddit last week. Neither one of us can remember this guy's name, and we both remember a ton of people back to 1986. We figured this guy burned all his local bridges because everyone knew everyone else in our business, and we have never heard about him again. He was working for a competitor in a different city, but my office was about 2 blocks from this guy's house. He would have made it in the shade if he stayed, but alas, 'twas not to be. So let me know how you guys see this. Was firing him justified, or was it going too far? And jerk or not a jerk, and why? Don't forget to subscribe to the second channel where you can hear some of my own personal stories linked down below. Am I the jerk for buying my 5th property rather than helping out my siblings? I'm a 44-year-old male, and for context, even when I was a child, I was incredibly into owning property and designing houses. I work as an architect, and I am doing quite well for myself. I bought my first duplex here in Germany a long time ago, where I rent out both parts. I then own 2 houses in Italy and 1 house in Spain. 2 of them get rented out as holiday homes, while the last one I use for vacations and rent out a room to a friend of mine. So I have a lot of passive income at the moment, but only after a lot of time and financial investment and refurbishing of these houses has been done. I rent in New York City at the moment as my job has made me move here temporarily. My 48-year-old brother lives in an apartment. He has a family with 2 kids, while my wife and I are childless. They are currently looking to purchase a house that fits all of them nicely. While they have found their dream house, it's out of budget for them. Meanwhile, my wife and I are about to buy our 5th house, this time in France. It's going to be one of our largest purchases yet, significantly larger than anything else we have done. It's a great deal on the property, and ideally where my wife and I want to retire. When having a family FaceTime with my siblings and parents, I brought it up. Initially very happy for me, my brother mentioned how he needs a larger home for his family and how I should give up on this opportunity to give him money for his house and spend the rest on refurbishing their new home. I just laughed and flat out said no. I thought this was a joke. This was apparently the wrong move. My entire family turns against me and starts berating me. After 10 minutes of them taking turns telling me to buy my brother a house, I said I'd think about it and left. I am a bit of a pushover, so after talking to my wife, we agreed we could wait and buy their house and rent it out to them at no profit. Apparently, this was insulting to him, having his younger brother be his landlord, and my parents said I should just outright give him the money we have been saving. I told them to piss off, and we started moving forward with the paperwork on our house in France. After talking to my friends, they said I should put my family first, and it's not like we're struggling for money. I want to clarify, my brother does have money for a 4-bedroom house. He isn't broke, just not enough money for his dream house. The dream house is approximately twice as expensive. Jumping into the future, there is an update. My wife and I discussed and thought you guys deserved an update after the clarity I received from my initial post. It feels therapeutic for me. It's been a wild month since then. We took in a lot of your advice regarding the situation, but it ended up being even more chaotic than I expected. Shortly after the post was when the pandemic in New York got worse. I ended up back in Spain. After a conversation with my friend in this post, I decided I had made the right choice. We are moving forward with the house in France currently. Furthermore, we are deciding to sell the 2 Italian homes. We realized we haven't been there ourselves in a long time and it was only being rented out. This decision was twofold. I couldn't get some of the remarks from my last post out of my head, and we wanted some liquidity given the economy. We also decided to only list with local real estate companies. On to my brother. It turned out he wasn't telling us the whole truth. A week after this post, his wife calls me asking me to reconsider. It turns out there was a reason, but my brother didn't want to tell me. So I told her, either he tells me himself or I won't consider anything. A week later, he ends up calling me and tells me everything. It turns out over the last 2 years, he had developed a gambling problem and has taken a noticeable percentage of their savings and blown it on gambling. He said it's less than 40% of their savings, but more than 15% according to him. The dream house was now a lot further out of reach than it was meant to be. Apparently, he has been going to therapy for it for months, but the financial damage did set them back far. My parents knew since the start, and I knew my brother was having marital problems a couple years ago, but I never asked why, as he and his wife were very secretive about details. Turns out this was the problem. Apparently, my parents parents had told him to ask me, but specifically asked too much from me. So when he rebutted with a smaller ask, I would be more inclined to accept. I had an incredibly harsh conversation with my parents. They feel like I owe the family and it's more their money than mine since they raised me. That's a whole different problem. I told him about the post and he was mad at first, but understood my position after reading through it. After a pretty difficult conversation with him, I offered the rent at cost. And once he has built up his savings, we will sell him the house minus any rent he has paid over the time it takes. Some people mention this, rent to own. He happily accepted. Jumping into the future, there's an interesting update. 2 years later. For the most part, the last 2 years have been overall terrible. Pandemic-related issues, but also due to my brother's actions. We ended up selling our business to a different firm in Germany. The pandemic made it difficult for us to set up our sourcing after not working on any projects for a couple months, so we decided to pull the plug when we got an offer. Not really doing anything since that, but we sold it at a profit. So we're going to explore our options for a while. Before we sold it, my brother and his wife ended up divorcing, as did my mother and my father. My father had a gambling addiction when we were younger, and my parents' reaction to the whole mess confused me at the time. It turns out my mother had forced my father to give his entire paycheck and then some, so he had turned to gambling by her suggestion. She is a very holier-than-thou type of person, so to hear that she suggested gambling was insane to me. But it turns out she is inherently very financially abusive. They almost divorced in the past, but she stopped pestering my father as much. He thought she had become better, but it turns out that good things never last. And when my brother started working, she started demanding similar things, and apparently using me as a reference that I too had been sending her money, and my success was driven by the motive to provide for myself and her. I moved abroad quite early, so my one-to-one connection with my brother was limited. Later, she pushed him into gambling and he fell head first. After the house situation, he had stopped for a couple of months but relapsed pretty quickly with local gambling machines, then switched to buying prepaid cards to gamble online again. My father claims to have had no idea it was occurring, but he was plenty happy with vacations paid by a stay-at-home wife. He filed for divorce, but I blame him equally at this point. My brother's wife filed for divorce shortly after it all came to light. Only once he filed did he tell her about our mom and what she was doing. I reached out to him to provide support, but he told me to piss off and never speak to him again. He lives with his girlfriend now and still gambles according to his wife. His wife is still in the house. We have stopped payments. She already worked part-time, but I don't want to cut into her expenses. I guess the only good thing is cheap interest rates on that mortgage. I've cut contact with both my father and my mother, and I guess I have to cut contact with my brother. I feel like my father divorced my mom in hopes that I would take him in. We have since moved into our house here in France. I am still not a fan of French people, but I guess I called this upon myself. My wife is thriving here with a retired/unemployed life. I've mostly been on Reddit or in my workshop. I think a combination of boredom, the pandemic, and my lost faith in my family have left me feeling disenfranchised a bit. I've been wanting to provide an update for about a year since we sold the company, but after the family news, I was always hoping for some good twist or good news here at the end. Reading back my original post, I feel like I had a tendency to focus on my own problems, how everything that's happened to me, and this was one of life's many trials, but now I realize that often you are just a side character in other people's trials, and your success has more to do with the right time and the right place. Anywho, a bit off tangent here, I'm just providing an update for those that wanted it. So, was I the jerk for wanting to buy my 5th property rather than help out my sibling and buy him a house instead? This is a story that I had to do a double take on. I ended up having to reread this after the final update because I don't know if it's just me, but this was written in a confusing way. Sometimes when it sounds like he's referring to the brother, he's referring to the father, and when he's referring to the father, he's referring to the brother. But the big picture point of it is his family has a gambling problem and they want him to help them buy a house. But they do it in kind of a roundabout, manipulative way because, as we end up finding out in one of the updates, they asked the OP for the biggest ask they could, knowing he would say no, so that when they came back and they asked for a smaller ask, he was more inclined to say yes. That is a textbook salesman strategy, and to some extent, it actually seems like it worked for a while. So let me know how you see the situation down below, and if it was you that was about to buy your 5th house and your sibling wanted you to buy them a house, would you do it? Let me know down below, and jerk or not a a jerk and why? My ex-fiancé wants to meet up after leaving me at the altar 4 years ago. I'm a 29-year-old female, and basically 4 years ago I was supposed to be getting married to my fiancé at the time, Jay. Everything was going perfect. I was in my dress, had my makeup on, and taking pictures with my bridesmaids. I was pretty much ready to walk down the aisle when Jay's best man pulled me aside to say that Jay was gone. He had gotten into a car and left, and no one was able to get a hold of him. I came home to our apartment and all of his stuff was gone. He's pretty much been a ghost ever since he left me, and I had to force myself to move on. I ended up going on our honeymoon with my best friend, which was the best decision ever, and then put myself in therapy to heal the horrible trust issues I now have. I haven't heard from him once until today. I guess he got back in contact with an old mutual friend who gave him my number. Jay texted me and said that he wants to meet up and apologize. He says he has a lot to explain to me about what happened that day. I'm torn. I swore Jay was a dead memory, but my curiosity and my desire to get closure with him is pestering me. My current boyfriend supports me, whatever I decide, and I feel out of respect to him and how wonderful he's been, I should just ghost Jay. I'm very confused. I never expected to hear from Jay again. I have no idea what to do. Please help. Jumping into the future, there is an update. First off, I want to thank everyone for the advice. I honestly wrote the post just to vent my frustration and confusion and possibly get some advice. I honestly forgot about the post for a few days until my sister and I were talking, and she mentioned she saw a post from some girl getting left at the altar and her ex showing up again years later. I told her it was mine, and she has been pushing me to do an update. I figure it might be therapeutic to write everything down as a final closing of the J chapter. This all happened 2 weeks ago. Against most of the advice, I did meet up with Jay. As a lot of you said, it did not add any value to my life. Also, it was a part of a 12-step program and he was making amends. We met up at a park and my boyfriend came along with me. He sat off to the side while Jay and I talked. I actually feel stupider after meeting with him. There were a lot of things in our relationship that would have had me out the door if I paid more attention and if he wasn't such a great liar. Basically, for the last year of our relationship, he was doing illegal substances and cheating on me. He had been struggling with his orientation for years, and it's not surprising that it ended up this way now knowing the truth. His family are incredibly homophobic and horrible people. I wanted nothing to do with them when we were together, but he insisted on them being around just for the big life events, like our wedding. The substances he was taking were just something to get him through the day and act like he was in love with me when he was actually in love with someone else. He had met his boyfriend at work, and I had actually met him a few times when I drop off lunch for Jay. When our wedding approached, his boyfriend said he needed to choose and Jay chose him. So he packed his bags and pretended everything else was great until his boyfriend picked him up and they moved 2 towns over. I asked him if he was still with his boyfriend and he said no. He thought he could quit the substances once he was free of his family and lying, but he couldn't. His boyfriend found out and left him. He kept going, getting high and hooking up with randoms. One of his regular hookups ended up overdosing while they were asleep in the same bed and died. And then he realized he had to get sober. He apologized for just not being honest with me and leading me on like he did. He wished he could go back and be truthful because I would have been the most accepting of him being gay out of everybody. He said he missed me when he left because even though he didn't love me romantically, I was his best friend. It was a lot to take in. I told him I'm glad he's okay and he's doing better. I'd prefer for us not to have any contact moving forward, but I do forgive him. He said he understood and he was only in town for a few more days and then he'd be gone for good again. I'll admit, when I got home, I cried. My boyfriend held me and ordered me my favorite takeout. He's been really the best and didn't pressure me to talk about anything until I was ready. So if I got anything out of the worst day of my life, it's led me to who I am with now. So considering the circumstances, was Jay the jerk? Even though the OP says that meeting with Jay didn't add any value to her life, I think that if she never would have met with him to find all this out, it probably would have eaten her up for the rest of her life. You don't get left at the altar many times in your life, and she would probably always wonder what happened. Why did that happen? So even though it wasn't some positive beacon of light, at least she knows now, and it's probably a lot easier now to move on from everything. She was really never an option at all to begin with. He just revealed that to her in a very cruel and selfish way. Why wait until the very last second when you've spent all this money, all this time, had all these people gathered, and the person that you care about, even as a best friend, you're about to crush beyond your comprehension? I get that he was in a hard position at the time because of his family and their views, but he ultimately ended up having to make a decision based on his his orientation anyway, so why wait until that moment at the altar to do it? Do it the day before you book the wedding venue. As most things in life, I'm sure it's easier said than done, but hopefully the OP is able to recover from this and move on from her life because she sounds like she's in a really happy place with her new guy. So if this was you in this situation, let me know how you would have handled it down below, and jerk or not a jerk, and why. My evil school principal steals money from our school that is supposed to be used to fund our computers and puts that money in his own pocket instead. My dad, my teacher, and I find a way to save the school, working all through spring break to get the computers working. The evil principal announces that his son saved the school and is awarded a scholarship. Then the son breaks into my locker, steals my $2,500 laptop, and deletes all the camera footage evidence. I was at my breaking point. They wasted my entire spring break, stole my laptop, took all the credit from me, and even got my scholarship. So I decided to destroy the lives of everyone involved. I found a way to get the footage, prove the principal had been stealing money, and fought to get the scholarship that was rightfully mine. Here's how I got my revenge. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell to turn on notifications. Written on mobile and I suck at English. This isn't a bully story. This guy never messed with me until this. These people have gone great lengths to find me. Blessed with a common name, I've avoided them. Attempts were made on my life, as in almost ran over. Someone tried to burn our house down, so please understand, I can't post anything that can lead these people to catch any hint as to where I am. I can't risk one of you finding these people and leading them to me. Here's the backstory. A long time ago in the year 2004, I attended a terrible high school. They cut costs on everything, and I mean everything but teacher wages. Only way to keep them. It was an alternative school. My father is in IT, information technology, so I was around computers all my life. This was a known fact. I'd constantly break into the school computers just to play Super Nintendo ROMs. Most of the time, nobody cared, and the computer lab teacher loved me because I'd constantly be repairing for her. Such a sweet lady. Anyway, our school had about 200 computers, and they all sucked. Not a single one was good. Well, there was one that I upgraded with my own parts to play games. Enter evil principal and his evil kid, me and Miss B. Evil principal was a cheap man and a jerk. He'd get me to repair electronics for him and not even pay or give me extra credit. The evil kid thought he was good at running computers. He just knew how to format. That's his solution to everything. The CPU running slow format. So the school did well in a statewide test. I'm talking no student got below a 90. And our state is stupid. So we got a huge grant to upgrade our computers. Now, being a cheap man, our teacher uses a sleazy computer shop and has them ordered. I offered to help, but the evil kid was already on the job. They ordered 250 new CPUs, and they are pretty decent. And the evil principal pockets the rest of the money from the fund. This comes up later. So the 250 CPUs are delivered, and Mrs. B and I get to work. Evil principal and the evil kid and their swarm go off for a family vacation as it's spring break. We give up our spring break because he threatens to fire Mrs. B if anything goes wrong. So after 50 CPUs, we were 2 days in. The cheap jerk cut the power to everything that wasn't important. I get to the front office to take a break and decide to boot up one of these bad boys because a secretary still worked and I could start data transferring. What I come to find out is that none of these have the operating system installed on them. That's right. No keys, no operating system, nothing. The cheap jerk elected not to get an operating system because it saved him $100 per machine. That stupid evil jerk. I run to Mrs. B and the fact that I was running meant that she knew something was up. I'm not a runny type of kid. Mrs. B said, "Oh God, what?" I said, "The evil principal didn't buy the operating system keys." She was dumbfounded, got up and exited. Suddenly, the overhead lights came on and we boot 60 CPUs to find not a single one had the operating system installed. Now she panics, and she is a by-the-books gal and calls the evil principal. I didn't get to hear much, but I caught the tail end. The evil principal doesn't see this as an emergency. He says, "I was with my family." Mrs. B says, "Sir, this is an emergency. We need the keys." The evil principal says, "No money for keys, Mrs. B." "Then no computers. You got yourself 250 paperweights." "Well, that sounds like a you problem. Buy the keys yourself." "I can't afford that. You know how much those are." "Either I have running computers or I'll be buying a new computer teacher by Monday." Click. Oh, I was pissed because I never saw Mrs. B cry. So I dialed my dad and asked for a solution as he was off, and he said he'd be right down. We set up, and my dad and his 3 IT crew show up. They were pissed too, but they had brewskis and brought the party to school. Now this wasn't a break the law plot. Just have some fun while doing a ton of free work as they were on vacation, and we were going to be here for days. We had 30 disks of unnamed operating systems and my father's corporate key. His work gave him one for home use and he was ready to help. So 3 days later, we had 250 computers set up, wired the whole school, wired network internet, updated all the school software, and installed everything. Brewskis were drunk and we camped in the school. We even watched movies off a projector. It was a blast. The next Monday, everyone came back from vacation to see shiny new computers. We spent the next 2 days assigning logins to the staff and students, teaching others to use the new systems. Mrs. B was hailed as a hero by staff and everyone knew that I helped. But now, the betrayal. You see, Mrs. B's deeds didn't go unnoticed and she was offered a fancy new job. She hated the evil principal and took it. Since she would no longer be teaching and there was only one computer class for stragglers, entitled principal let her go with no shade. 2 weeks before she left, she wrote a letter for a scholarship program the school offered for a tech school in their district. Think a high school for mega nerds. Gave copies to me, an evil principal, and departed, but in her absence, things started going south. The CPUs needed fixing, and an important note, locker theft started occurring bad. I'm talking so bad the superintendent installed cameras in the locker areas because parents were getting pissed. Now, we hold an assembly to honor the good students and all of that, and it's a well-known fact of my deeds and what I've done. The superintendent is there, the evil principal, evil kid, and his mom were there. My parents didn't have time. It was cool, I didn't care. They get down the list and then the story. How a teacher and a student gave up their vacation, how they rescued the school from an ordering error, lol, and how they wish the teacher was there to honor her, but they can honor the student in her place. I grinned that I was being praised by the man who I hated most. The evil principal said,
"Please, a round of applause to evil kid, my son, for saving the school's computers. Your actions have not gone unnoticed, as you've now gotten a full scholarship to the tech school."
I did not hear the rest as my world went red. My friend held me back as to not charge the stage. I was literally going to end those MFs with my bare hands. I do remember the booing. I left for the day. I was livid. They just took credit for my work, stole my scholarship, treated Mrs. B poorly, and thought that I would take it. Revenge wasn't enough. No, I was going to destroy them. Finally, the revenge. Weeks had passed by. I had exactly 1 month to do this with a group of 8 who knew the whole story, and we were literally the 8 smartest students. The Revenge Council was formed. We never met on school grounds, never at the same place twice, followed a strict set of rules, and formed our plan. They only helped me form the plan. I did the legwork. So, phase 1. Phase 1 was to destroy the evil kid. So I spoke with the super and I told him the story, how I was being robbed. He said I would need proof. That was easy, I already had it, but I needed time, so I said, let me collect it. He said he'd also look into it. I needed him to distract the evil principal. Now, I didn't have access to school functions, but Mrs. B did. I contacted her and explained what happened. She was pissed. She said come in and fix it, but I mentioned I needed to make sure this never happened again. Oh, that laugh of hers was so adorable. I crushed hard on her. She was beautiful. The Revenge Council now had our 9th member. I just needed one more thing, her login, and she happily provided. As long as there was no trail, cameras are now under my control. Now remember the locker thefts? Well, cruising the cameras we confirmed who we all thought the thief was, and guess who the culprit was? The evil kid had used the evil principal's login to access the locker combo sheet and was stealing things. He covered his tracks by deleting the camera footage. Not this time though. Not this time. See, my dad had gotten a new laptop and gifted me his old one. This was at the time a $2,500 custom-made laptop. That thing was my main computer for years after this, but I had to risk it. So one day I brought it to school, showed it off, played some heavy graphics games. Evil kid buddied up to me. His eyes lit up. The bait was set. He followed me, talking video games, inviting me to his place for some game sessions as I'm walking up to my locker. He turns around as per school rules not to see my combination, and I place my laptop bag into my locker as my next class is PE and his was free study. Bait in the trap. He asks,
"Aren't you afraid of getting it stolen?"
I say, nah, my dad can always get another one from work, plus that, and I point to the camera.
"Yeah, those catch everything. Plus, I heard they caught the thief. Dad says when it's proven, he's gonna announce it."
I say, that's a relief. Get with me after school. I live close and we can walk home and game out. I leave the direction of PE, but it's not my class. I had free study. I stealth my way into the math class and tell the teacher I'm updating the CPUs, and he loves me and allows me and starts his class. I watch the cameras. 20 minutes later, the evil kid shows up with a garbage bag, pulls out a notebook, opens my locker, and grabs the laptop. He opens the bag to confirm it, pulls it out and places it in the garbage bag, grabs the mouse and the charger too, returns a laptop bag and leaves. He's wearing gloves. He thinks he's clever. I save the file, wait another 20 minutes, solve a math problem for the class, look to see, and the file for that area is deleted. I hide the copied files and restore them. Hiding was just a backup. I didn't need it, but I wanted a copy, to which I still have to this day. Phase 1 complete. Phase 2. At lunch, I go to the locker and pretend to discover my empty bag. I was with a council member. She runs to grab the school cop and they come. As they are real cops, he radios for a squad car, and I kid you not, 5 cars showed up and they locked it down. They were about to launch a locker search but decided to check the cameras. This was done in the evil principal's office where evil kid happened to be playing games. Evil principal comes in and gives them access. Evil principal says for some reason the files are corrupt. It's a recent problem that we were fixing. Evil kid smirks, and cop says, "Alright, guide me to today's cameras and which one is in that area." Evil principal says,
"I think cam 6.
That was wrong, of course, and then the entitled kid said,
"Now it's cam 9.
"You dense jerk." But the cop says, "Here it is. I found it in the files fine." The evil kid goes white. I wish I could tell you what happens next, but I was excused as they found their culprit. Then I see evil kid and evil principal walk out with 2 police escorts, and I'm called back in. I get to see the footage. Cop 3 shows me that evil kid was the one who stole it. I act shocked. I'm good at acting too, sobbing slightly because he was my friend and how could he, etc, etc. 15 minutes later, he walks in and hands me the laptop.
"I'm so sorry. Please don't press charges. I just wanted to play it. I was gonna put it back."
The cop says it's out of his hands as the value was more than $1,000. "I'm afraid it's a felony. Charges will be filed. Turn around and put your hands behind your back." The entitled principal's face sunk. His boy was the school thief. He used his dad's login to get locker combinations and deleted the camera footage. They searched his house and found over $5,000 worth of stolen property in his room. He was in deep. But I wasn't done yet. Now it was evil principal's turn. This phase was not as long as I only had to do one thing. Word hadn't reached school yet. Evil principal covered his son with a coat as he was let out, and I was told not to say a word to anyone, but the superintendent was going to question me on the incident. After a long questioning session, he brings up the proof. I said yes, I had it, and presented a copy of the letter Mrs. B wrote. He reads it, his jaw drops, and he quickly calls her. After a brief phone call, a meeting was set up. Evil principal, the superintendent Chalmer, Mrs. B, and my dad all came. We explained what happened, how I gave up my entire week to save the school's computers, how my father came in and did free work, how this could have been prevented if evil principal wasn't so cheap. But as with all great plans, you can't plan for everything. I expected a sacking, but I got much, much more. You see, it came to light how much the budget was and how much was really spent. So so where was the rest? It turns out the evil principal stole it. He skimmed off the top of a lot of the budgets, but he hid this one as he thought he could as well. I don't know the details to that, but one, he used the excuse of the operating system keys. My dad piped up when he tried this. My dad said, I donated my personal corporate key and my super corporate key. It lets me install the operating system as many times as I want. It's how we didn't have to buy 250 keys. He explained to the superintendent and he was shocked. He showed the superintendent proof the key was his and pulled it up on the CPU to show how they were the same. The evil principal had no way out. I said, why didn't tech school get this letter? Evil principal in sob says,
I had to approve all the letters sent on the school's behalf. She no longer works here when it came time.
I said, nonsense. You had 2 weeks to send it. You just wanted to steal my scholarship for your thief of a kid. Every class on that floor heard me shout that. My dad and I left and the superintendent and evil principal were going to talk. My dad said, if my son doesn't get the scholarship by tomorrow, then remove my keys from all the school computers. Needless to say, phase 3 was complete. There were 2 weeks of school left. The scholarship was mine. The whole story came out anyway. It turns out he skimmed all the money he saved, and we spent the next 2 weeks without evil principal in sight. To be honest, I never learned his fate, but I know evil kids. The attack. It was the second last day of school. Evil kid was out on bail or something. He was expelled. He decided to wait for me in the parking lot. As I'm walking out, I see him. He sees me and I think he wants to apologize. Nope. He just stares at me and walks away. I shrug and walk a block away. 2 football jocks were across the street. Then I feel it. A blow to the back of my head. The entitled kid just sucker punched me and had me on the ground. I flipped to my back, and back then, well, it's low, I know, but I fought dirty. As he's on top of me winding up, I plant a knee right into his family jewels, smashing them. I went hard. He falls over and seethes in pain. I'm pissed though, but one of the jocks pulls me off, and I kid you not, the other says, "This is for my dead father's necklace," and stomps on his hand as hard as he could. He passes out and cops show up, the same ones as before, and now he gets the charges of assault and possession of a deadly weapon. He had a blade and was hauled off to ER. The fall caused me to twist an ankle and I was limping. After the dust clears, a few months go by and I find out he gets 10 years and I regret nothing. Should have just not stolen credit from my work. Some of you will say that I went too far. I want you to know you are correct. Do not mess with me. So, am I the jerk for how I got my revenge? That part at the end where the jocks come up and get involved really reminds you of how much this guy has probably stolen. Yeah, it was about $5,000 worth of stuff, but how do you quantify the value of sentimental things like this guy's dead father's necklace? And the whole thing was only possible because his dad was a principal, so he had access to being able to cover his tracks. A normal person wouldn't be able to get away with this. And after all of that, the original poster thought that this guy would somehow come up to him and apologize, which is pretty naive considering how manipulative this guy has been the entire time, even pretending to be his friend and saying, "Hey, let's go play games after we get out of school." Yeah, right after he steals your laptop from your locker. And then on top of all of that, the principal was embezzling money from the school, the place that usually needs money the most. Schools are generally underfunded, and this guy was just skimming off the top, and I wonder where his son learned how to act like that. If the principal was just casually embezzling money this entire time at the expense of the students of this school, you can only imagine what other types of things he does in front of his son, where his son would grow up to do something like this, try and pull off an elaborate, regular heist of going into people's lockers and stealing whatever he can find and then covering his tracks by deleting the footage. This was a pretty intense revenge. It was very detailed and specific as to exactly what went down and how it went down. One of the things I'm surprised by is how long the OP let it go after the award was given to the son instead of given to him. Most people wouldn't have had the restraint to devise this entire plan and wait, but the OP did that knowing that the alternative would be futile. There was no point in telling anybody about it because they would just keep asking for proof. And that's pretty much what happened when he did try. It's strange how a lot of times people in positions of power will end up being like this, or it's sort of this paradox because the only reason they're in that position is because of their tendency to be like this. For some people, there's obviously good eggs out there too. It's kind of the same thing as business where the most ruthless survive, and then who do you have at the top of everything? the most ruthless people. As always, if you guys have a story of your own, you're more than welcome to submit it via the link down below. And don't forget to subscribe to the second channel where you can hear some of my personal stories, also linked down below. But let me know how you see this story. What would you have done if you're in this situation? Do you think this was going too far, or was it justified? My trailer trashed addict tough guy neighbor keeps stealing my mail and tries to act tough. So I respond by helping the state take his kid, get him arrested, and make him lose everything. Here's how I pulled off my revenge. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell to turn on notifications. It all started about 4 months ago while I was living in a terrible duplex in a bad part of the city where I used to live. I had been living in this duplex for about a year and a half, and even though it wasn't in a good part of the city, no one really bothered us and our neighbors were pretty normal, so I didn't really mind it. At least not until my old neighbors moved out and Satan's minions moved in. I knew from the moment I met them that there was going to be an issue. There were 5 of them altogether, 3 guys, 1 baby, and 1 girl. And these were the only 1-bedroom places. I tried my best not to judge, so I went over while they were moving to say hello and welcome them to the area. I walk over and say, "Hey, how's it going? I guess you guys are my new neighbors now, huh?" All 5 of them, at the exact same time, stopped what they were doing and stared at me. The oldest of the bunch was a guy, and I extended my hand out to shake his, and he just looked at my hand and then looked up at me and said, "What do you want, kid?" I replied, "Just to welcome you guys to the area. Sorry to bother you." He just stared at me, so I started to walk off, and as I did, I looked back and he said, "Lift with your knees, not with your back," just to be a jerk. That was the only contact I had with them for the next 2 weeks. This is when things started going missing. I had ordered a very expensive pair of headphones for my music hobby, and my girlfriend had some expensive makeup that seemed to have just disappeared. The orders said delivered, but the stuff was nowhere to be found, so I did the logical thing and knocked on the door right next to mine. The guy answered almost before my fist left the door and stared me down with a crazed look in his eye. He said nothing for a solid 8 seconds, so I said, "Hey, I'm missing some mail and I was wondering if maybe you guys had picked up some packages by mistake." He continues to stare at me and I notice some white powder peeking out from one of his nostrils, and I suddenly get a better idea of who this guy is. He then snorts really loudly and spits on the porch in front of me and says, "No, but if I did, what does that mean?" At this point, I'm frustrated and I say, "What are you getting at? You realize mail theft is a federal crime, right?" He immediately gets in my face and says, "Anything coming to my house belongs to me, and if you want something of mine, then you're gonna have to pay for it." It all becomes very clear to me now. This guy is your typical trailer trash addict tough guy. So I continue to look at him in his bloodshot and bruised eyes and say, "Look, if you have my stuff, I will find out. Don't say I didn't try to negotiate with you." And then I left. I then went to my local sporting goods store and purchased a game camera. I set the camera up in the tree in our shared front yard while they were gone, and then ordered some stuff on Amazon to bait the trap. Sure enough, I had video of them not only taking my mail but performing 4 illegal substance deals on my porch. At this point, I am pissed, but I'm a reasonable guy, so I try to go over to work this out with the help of the law. I knock on the door and I'm greeted by the same crazy-eyed guy and the same bloodshot stare as before. This time he greets me with, "Do you want to buy something, or do I need to tell you to piss off?" I almost walked away right there, but I was keeping it together because I had the power and I wanted to gloat. I replied, "Look, I know what you do for a living and I know you have my mail. I just want my stuff back and I don't want any more illegal substance deals going on around my house, or I'll call the police." He gets furious immediately and starts to yell in my face, "Go F yourself, little F slur boy. This is my house and you aren't gonna do nothing to me. I own this whole town, and if you try anything, I will mess you up so bad they'll never identify the body." I just smiled the biggest smile of my entire life and replied, "Okay, see you later, man," and walked away. You see, the first time after talking to this guy, I decided decided that I was going to record our conversation with my phone, just to get any extra evidence in case I turned it all over to the police. I had just recorded him giving me a death threat. I called the cops, gave them all the video footage of the mail theft, of the illegal substance deals going down, and the audio of him threatening me. Luckily, this happened in a one-party state, so all evidence could be used in court. Him and his cohorts were all arrested. Their kid was taken by CPS, and I just watched from my front window with the most accomplished feeling probably ever in my entire life. I haven't gotten my stuff back yet though, and I still have to testify in court. So am I the jerk? These neighbors are probably people who have never had somebody fight back against what they were doing, and that's why it went down the way that it did, with such hostility and the original poster having to go to the lengths he did in order to get proof. And usually it's a sad situation when parents get a kid taken, but from the sounds of it, pretty much anything would be a better environment to grow up in than this, with all the deals going on constantly and the adults in the house that were always on something, threatening people to come to their door all the time. That kid will probably have a much better life anywhere else, and these neighbors probably never would have been found out if they just didn't steal the original poster's packages, at least not for a while. They were probably already making a ton of money as it was because of the nature of their business, but then they got greedy and had to steal this guy's headphones, and that was the straw that broke the camel's back. It pushed him into setting up the cameras, getting video proof of what was going down, and ultimately turning them in. Now they lost their kid, their freedom, and all of that money that they had been making. So was the revenge justified, or was it going too far? Let me know down below when jerk or not a jerk and why. Before we jump into the next story, don't forget to subscribe to the second channel where you can hear some of my personal stories, linked down below in the description. My wife and her best friend accused me of having an affair and then got angry when I didn't have one. I'm a 31-year-old male and my wife is 29. We had a baby last December. It was a traumatic birth and my wife developed postpartum depression. While she was originally going to go back to work after the birth, she's been struggling enough that we decided to wait until our daughter was a year old and reassess. She has been going to therapy weekly. With my wife home full time, I've had to work increased hours. This is something we discussed prior to making this decision, and she knew this from the start. A few weeks ago, my boss approached me about a project that would require a lot of overtime in a short amount of time. It would both be great financially and for my career. I talked to my wife about it and she agreed that I should say yes to my boss. For 4 weeks I'd be working on this, and my mother-in-law and her best friend, Jessie, who's 29, would come help out with some of the duties that I typically do. Jessie is a stay-at-home mom with a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. She began coming over during the day and would watch the kids with my wife. 3 weeks into the project, it became clear that we need a few more weeks to get it together. I went home that night and talked to my wife about it. She said she was okay with it, but got very cold in the days after. It wasn't unusual behavior over the past few months, so I didn't think much of it and tried not to take it personally. During the last week of the project, I got home one night and saw Jessie was still at the house. I didn't think much about it. I said hi to her and my wife and then went to go check on our daughter. Before I could get into her room, I heard Jessie say something along the lines of,
"He doesn't even stop to greet you? Definitely a sign."
I turned around and asked what it was a sign of. Immediately, my wife started crying and Jessie started accusing me of having an affair. She told me that I must hate my wife because she has postpartum depression and that I'm not attracted to her because she's gained weight from the pregnancy. Neither of these things are true. I'm trying my best to help my wife through her postpartum depression while supporting our family, and I think she looks great how she is now. She just hasn't wanted to do the deed and I haven't pushed. Jessie then demanded to see my phone. I told her no. She told me that's a sign that I'm guilty. I told my wife that I would let her see my phone if she wanted to. She nodded and something inside me broke. I guess it was the thought that she actually believed that I was having an affair that really got to me, and that she didn't trust me after everything we've been through. Well, she looked through the phone and there was no evidence. Jessie started saying that I deleted the evidence. She started screaming and that woke up our daughter, so I told her to get out of the house. Eventually, she left and I went to calm our daughter since my wife was still on the couch crying. When my daughter was asleep again, I sat down by my wife and tried to talk to her about what's been happening. She told me that she's been worried ever since I started working all the overtime. I told her that we talked about how good of an opportunity it was and she agreed to letting me take on this project. She said it was very suspicious to increase the length of the project. I told her that happens sometimes. She wanted more evidence, so I showed her messages and emails with timestamps from work and pay stubs showing the overtime. She said she believed me and she was sorry for doubting me. It was just that Jessie had been telling her these were all signs signs that I was cheating. I asked her why she believed Jesse more than me, and why didn't she come to me with her concerns. She didn't have a real answer. It's been a couple of weeks and the project is over. I actually scaled back and I'm trying to work a little less than I was before on the project so I can spend more time with my wife and daughter, but I feel so burnt out trying to do everything and becoming resentful because in the back of my mind, I know that my wife doesn't trust me. I ask myself, what happens the next time I have a project? Or if I have to run errands one day, or if I have a business trip, am I going to come back every time to accusations that I'm cheating? I've tried bringing it up a couple times, but my wife tells me it's not the time and that she's tired or sad. I try to be mindful of her feelings, but I wonder if that means I can never have any of my own. I'm not sure what to do here. Any advice for how I can move forward? Jumping into the future, there is an update. That night, I approached my wife and told her that I was going to find a therapist. I didn't connect it to her accusations or anything, just said that I was having a tough time and I needed therapy. She shrugged and then told me to do whatever. The next day I got home from work and our room and my home office was ripped apart. Things were everywhere. Important papers were scattered. I don't see her, but our daughter is in her room crying. My wife left her alone? Her cell phone's off? I call my in-laws and a few friends, but no one's seen her. I'm starting to get worried, and I call my mom to see if she can babysit while I go out and look for her. Before my mom can get home, my wife gets back. Jesse's driving. Jessie doesn't come in. She hasn't been back in the house since I kicked her out because she was offended by my behavior, but my wife does. She's clearly upset, been crying. I ask what happened. I thought at first the house might have been robbed. She starts screaming at me that I'm being unfaithful and that therapy is a front so that I can meet my mistress. I try to calm her down and tell her that's not true, but she came at me and swung. My nose is broken. She kind of realized what she did and sat down on the couch and went comatose, just stared at the wall. I went into my daughter's room and locked the door. I called my mom to tell her what happened. She was already on her way, and my mother-in-law to ask her to come over and take care of my wife. I packed a bag for my daughter, and when my mom got there, we left. My wife didn't even look up. We dropped my daughter off with my dad and then went to urgent care for my nose. I got blood all over my mom's brand new Subaru. My daughter and I are staying with my parents for a while, and my wife is staying with hers. I'm looking into getting a restraining order against Jessie. My wife and I are separating. I love her, but I won't live with someone who hurts me and who could potentially hurt our daughter. I am not going forward with a divorce yet, with the hopes that my wife's will get the treatment she needs and we can work things out. My in-laws told me they're looking at inpatient treatment at a local hospital, but I also have everything well documented in case of an eventual custody battle. My heart is broken because I know this isn't my wife. This is a sickness in her mind, but I need to keep myself and our daughter safe and give her the space to recover. I'm hoping that this is the right decision. Jumping into the future, there is a sad update. My wife passed away on early Monday morning, convinced by her friend Jessie that I was having an affair that I did not have. She had a mental break, which resulted in my taking of our infant daughter and staying with my parents for a while. She was with her parents, who planned on taking her to the hospital for inpatient treatment on Monday. On Sunday, she came to my parents' house and demanded that I give her our daughter. Because she had left her alone for several hours the last time she was responsible for her and had gotten physical with me, I refused. I offered to let her come in and spend time with her while my parents and I were present, but she didn't want to come in and wanted to take our daughter with her. She was upset but left eventually. A few hours later, she drove her parents' car into a tree and died. The friend, Jessie, came to see my daughter and me yesterday. After some tears, she told me that she was planning to speak at my wife's funeral. She had already cleared it with my in-laws but was letting me know as a courtesy. I told her she would not be speaking at the funeral. We fought, and she left after telling me that I was a jerk and not the only person who loved my wife. I talked to my in-laws, who were adamant that Jessie be allowed to speak. She and my wife knew each other since they were kids, and my in-laws were close to her. We're all very fragile right now, and I fear that pushing this further would hurt my relationship with my in-laws, which I don't want. Still, the thought of seeing Jessie up there at my wife's funeral makes me sick. I don't think I can stand to listen to her, knowing that she took joy in my wife's deteriorating mental health and picked up my wife, leaving my daughter home alone. That said, I don't trust myself to make the best decisions right now. My mind's clouded by grief, guilt, and fear. My parents are split on what to do, and I don't have the energy to reach out to my friends. So I'm coming here again to ask for your advice. What should I do? This was a horrifying story. I did not expect it to get that dark. From the way the OP tells it here, it sounds like the postpartum depression is the key factor that allowed his wife's mind to be so susceptible to the influence of Jesse. And since the entire crux of this story is built around postpartum depression, I wanted to actually look up to learn a little bit about it and tell you guys for those that may not know. So everything that happened here apparently is not the only symptom from that. According to the wiki, some of the other symptoms include extreme sadness, low energy, anxiety, crying episodes, irritability, and changes in sleeping or eating patterns. I mean, he even describes in the story how she went comatose on the couch after she got physical with him. Apparently, it affects 15% of women after childbirth, and there's a thing called postpartum psychosis, which is a more severe form of postpartum mood disorder, and that occurs much less frequently, about 1 or 2 people out of every 1,000. And apparently, the psychosis part of postpartum psychosis implies the presence of manic symptoms, stupor or catatonia, perplexity, confusion, disorders of the will and the self and or hallucinations. And there's a bunch of other ones, but whether it's postpartum depression or postpartum psychosis, I don't know, I'm not a doctor. But something was definitely playing on her mind. The fact that he actually showed her proof that he was not cheating. He had the pay stubs for the overtime, the messages from his boss, but yet she was still susceptible to the friend who was trying to tell her that he was having an affair. Really demonstrates the severity of her mental state at the time. I mean, even the lack of judgment, leaving a newborn baby alone and driving off on a whim. All of that adds up to something was seriously wrong in her mind, and it all led to this tragic outcome. So if this was you in this situation, would you allow Jesse to speak at your wife's funeral? Let me know down below. I'm a 29-year-old female and I keep finding long hairs in my bathroom, which is strange because my 32-year-old husband is bald and I have a short pixie crop hairstyle. This started a few weeks ago. While cleaning the bathroom, I found a number of long hair strands over my bathroom wall by the shower. This struck me as very odd because not only does my husband not have hair, I also wear a very cropped short hairstyle, so it's impossible for the strands I found to belong to either me or my husband. Confused, I washed them away but couldn't stop thinking about it. I decided not to mention it, but I kept looking out for them. There seems to be a pattern that there's hairs appearing when I'm either at work or out for a long period of time. I feel like I'm going crazy and feel like I shouldn't just immediately assume that my husband is cheating on me with a longer haired woman. I asked my husband about it and he just shrugged, which makes me more paranoid as surely this is something that's strange, so why is he so blasé about it? I'm starting to think he's playing it down to stop me from finding out the truth. It happened again 2 days ago and I asked my husband again. He dismissed it, but this time admitted it's strange, but told me the only explanation is that they must be my hairs. They are not. And after saying so, now he'll just ignore me if I bring it up. I don't want to assume my husband is cheating on me and accuse him of something like that over something so ridiculous, but I'm driving myself into the ground trying to work out how the hairs have gotten there without my husband dismissing it as nothing. During the lockdown, we haven't had any visitors that I know of, so I can rule out his sister. Jumping into the future, there is an update. I ultimately decided against getting a secret camera set up because ironically enough, I didn't want to betray my partner's trust, though part of me wanted to get one to squash any worries of someone living in my walls, as per some comments said. I did though plan to leave work early, which is something I've never done before. My boss allowed me to leave after half a day. Upon returning home, nothing seemed amiss. I was expecting another car on the driveway or parked outside on the street. There was no other car I didn't recognize. Quietly letting myself in, I was immediately confused. In the hallway, there was a pair of shoes I didn't recognize, and not only that, they looked like men's shoes. Standing in the hallway, trying to work out what to do, if I should sneak around or make my presence known, something happens before I could decide. My husband walked out of the kitchen with 2 cups of tea. By my husband's face, it was obvious he was surprised to see me. Playing along with my naivety, I asked my husband how could he have known that I was coming home to make me tea. Expecting my husband to lie, he surprised me by sitting me down and explaining everything. At the beginning of lockdown, his friend, someone I'm not all that close with because we've only met once, was evicted, lost his job, and had been couch surfing. So for some days over the past few weeks, this guy has been traveling to our house with the acceptance of my husband, using our bathroom to freshen up and attend interviews. He was also borrowing shirts and suits from my husband. As it turned out, my husband's friend has long hair and a beard. So it turns out my husband isn't cheating on me, but was hiding the fact that his long-haired friend was coming over to use our shower. After his shower, I ended up meeting Dave, and he turned out to be a very nice bloke, just down on his luck. I wished him the best for his socially distanced interview, and he went on his way. I asked my husband, why didn't he just tell me, as I wouldn't have had a problem with it. It turns out he was worried about my reaction and me not liking his friend or approving of the situation. He also told me Dave was very embarrassed about the whole situation and didn't want people to know what he was having to do. I told my husband I was starting to believe he was cheating, and he was shocked, having not even considered those implications while attempting to covering for his friend. I told him this whole thing was ridiculous and even suggested his friend live with us until he's back on his feet. Funnily enough, my worst case scenario, which was mentioned in the replies, was either a homeless man or woman living in my walls and sneakily using the shower. And though this seems to be half the case, I'm glad it wasn't a stranger as such that wasn't unwelcome and someone that wasn't living in my walls. So was I the jerk for thinking that my husband might be cheating on me? The most glaringly strange part of this whole thing is the fact that the husband wouldn't have just told the wife. His first reason doesn't really make any sense. It kind of sounds like he's just lying without lying. He's lying by omission. He didn't want to tell her because she thought she would say no, so he decided to just do it without talking with her at all. That's a weaker reasoning when compared to the second one. The second one makes a lot more sense. Dave was very embarrassed about the whole situation and didn't want people to know what he was having to do. Before agreeing to that, the husband should have just been upfront and honest and saying, hey, I won't tell anybody about this, but I do need to let my wife know because she lives here too. I think that's perfectly reasonable, especially if you let him know my wife won't be telling anyone. I mean, she ended up finding out anyway, and she was bound to find out because she lives there. Of course, eventually something would happen, especially if this was a long-term thing. So even though the second reason does make a lot more sense, the husband should have just been upfront with the friend to begin with and then avoided all of this secrecy and confusion. But it was really kind of the wife to offer him just to move in until he got on his feet. That's something not everyone would do. So let me know how you see this situation down below, and do you think the wife was the jerk for even considering that her husband might be cheating? Let me know down below. I work at a school in a very rich area. The kids are used to this extravagant, luxurious life, and one day I had to put a spoiled brat, rotten kid in timeout, and that kid told her mom, and now her mom wants to sue me. Here's what happened. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell to turn on notifications. About 5 years ago, when I was 20 years old, I used to work as a yard supervisor at the local elementary school while I was on break from college. It wasn't much, but I'd at least get a month's worth of work in the summer and then a week in the winter. They were also super lenient with my hours, probably because they tended to be shorthanded, and also my mother worked at the school as a teacher too. If you don't know what a yard supervisor is, we're the kind of people who stand in the lunchroom or on the playground during recess and make sure the kids are behaving. Basically glorified babysitters. I was the youngest of my co-workers, since the others who worked there were women who had kids that attended the school. For some background, this school was in the rich part of town, the kind of elementary school situated in a nice suburban neighborhood where everyone has Cadillac, SUVs, and maybe a BMW, Mercedes, or Tesla as their second car, and they love to try to solve all their inconveniences with lawyers. I always thought it was a stereotype that the rich people in town would threaten you with their lawyers when they didn't get what they wanted. Most of the time, they were bluffing though. Anyways, among the fourth graders at this school, there was this kid named Hannah. Honestly, I don't remember, but her name might have actually been Hannah. I doubt it matters though. She was your classic playground bully, a notorious liar, loved to pick on anyone smaller than her, which, considering her size, there were plenty of kids for her to choose from, and she had quite the temper. She was also supposed to be in the 5th grade, but had been held back a year, and she had this other girl named Sierra as her crony. Hannah always initiated the trouble and would boss Sierra around to do her bidding. She would even activate Sierra occasionally. One time I witnessed Hannah shove Sierra and then run up to tell me Sierra shoved her. Sierra, getting mad, would then shove Hannah, and at this point, I'd have to send them both to the principal's office, and to my knowledge, they'd just get off with a warning. Sierra's not important to the story though. I just wanted to add that bit so you can kind of picture Hannah and her like Scott Farkas and his crony. The situation was almost identical. None of my co-workers, including Hannah's teacher, liked Hannah. She was notorious for causing trouble and then making up elaborate lies to cover herself. Everyone knew this and had warned me when I first started the job. If you're wondering why nothing was ever done or why this child never got therapy, I have no idea. This was the US public education system, and also her mother was a B, which I'll get to later. One day I'm working in the lunchroom and I overhear Hannah calling another student names and making them cry. Supposedly, she also struck him, but none of us witnessed it, though we wouldn't put it past her. We remove Hannah from the table and make her sit at this this table that we have reserved for delinquents, while we write up a note to send her to the principal. At best, she would get detention or perhaps a couple days suspension. This is a reoccurring problem. The bell for recess rings and we make Hannah stay inside and sit at the table in timeout. No recess for her that day. The rest of the story I was not here for. I was only told the rest by my coworkers the next day. Hannah, returning to class, goes to her teacher and tells her,
"The young yard duty hit me and called me names."
I am the young yard duty, being 20 years old while my coworkers were at least in their 40s. The teacher knows she's lying and tells her to take it up with the principal since such a claim is serious. Hannah doesn't like the principal, so instead, after school, she goes to one of the other yard supervisor and tells her the same thing. That yard supervisor was working with me in the lunchroom that day and knew that no such thing happened and tells her not to tell lies. Hannah, of course, then goes to her mom. Hannah's mom had as much a reputation around the school as Hannah did for being just an all-around unpleasant person. Hannah's mom is also under the impression that her daughter could never do any wrong and that the school was constantly trying to pick on her. I think her claim was the school was bullying her for being fat or for being too pretty. It was one or the other, or maybe both, since my only knowledge about this came from my coworkers. So you can probably guess her reaction when Hannah told her the story that she made up. Hannah's mom, the entitled mom, goes straight to the principal's office and starts cursing out the principal and demands legal action to be taken. The principal, having already been notified of Hannah's behavior in the lunchroom that day and being well acquainted with both Hannah and the entitled mother's behavior, told the entitled mother the real story. The entitled mother insists that I must have actually done something to Hannah and that she's been bullied this entire time at school and that saying Anna did these things must be me trying to cover my butt and that I must be on a power trip or something. She demands a lawsuit against me and wants me in the office to face her. I had already left work for the day and the principal was under no obligation to call me and didn't care to entertain the entitled mother with her antics anyway. The principal then tells her if I did do these things then she should file a police report. The entitled mother agrees, but this is where Hannah snaps. For some reason, perhaps just the way police are portrayed to kids as these heroes who will find you out, Hannah is terrified of the thought of having to talk to the police. So finally, Hannah starts crying and spills that she made it up and that nobody had struck her and that she was just mad about missing recess for a timeout. The entitled mom, of course, now believes that Hannah has been coerced into admitting this because why would her little angel lie? The entitled mom storms out of the office claiming that she'll still get her lawsuit, and that's the last thing I hear about her. No lawsuit ever came, thankfully, because I know my broke college butt would never be able to afford it. Many of my coworkers told me that they've had lawsuits threatened on them from various parents aside from the entitled mother, but they never came to anything. It was almost a game for how many lawsuit threats you could get during your time at that school. One of my coworkers, before she ended up being fired for a claim Hannah made against her, that's another story, the principal didn't get a choice in it, and our school board, which was also just terrible in more ways than one, decided she had too many claims against her and that she should be let go, taught me a great quote from that ordeal. The bee apple doesn't fall far from the bee tree. So am I the jerk for how I handle this? I just imagine working on this place, you have to be on edge constantly because every single person there probably thinks that they are superior in some way because of their parents and what their parents do and what connections their parents have and who their lawyer is. It's a weird way to start off life as a kid, automatically thinking that you are above other people, especially your own teachers and people that work at the school. I think most people have the experience that they're just a normal kid and they don't have this weird power trip that a lot of kids at this school seem to have. And even when that is the case, where the kids are like that in that state of mind, it's a pretty weird thing to lie about. It's a serious accusation. Somebody's whole life could be ruined over that. But I'm guessing the reason that Hannah lied about that is probably because she knew what a big deal it would make, or at least she thought she would. She probably wouldn't think it would involve the police when she first said that, but she thought it would get enough attention for her to get what she wanted. So let me know how you see the situation down below, and jerk or not a jerk, and why. Before we jump into the next story, don't forget to subscribe to the second channel where you can hear some of my personal stories linked down below in the description. And if you're interested one day in working on the new channel with us, there's a link for that down below too. Can my parents make me go to fat camp? I'm a 14-year-old boy and I live in New York State with my mom and stepfather. My dad died before I was born and I grew up alone with my mom until I was 10 and she met him, my stepfather. They married about 2 years ago and he has been my stepfather ever since. I do not hate my stepfather and he does not hate me. I'm glad that he met my mother. She was very lonely when I was a kid and he makes her happy and is a very kind person. We were also very poor and he is a businessman who makes a lot of money and can take care of my mom so she doesn't have to overwork herself. He has never gotten an argument with me and we do not fight, but it is very awkward in the house between us, even with both of us trying to be nice. We have very little in common, but I want to repeat, I do not hate him at all because I know that many people have relationships with their step-parents of that sort and I do not have that. So I am fat, very fat, very, very fat. I have always been fat. I was the tallest kid in my class last year at about 260 pounds, which I know is fat. My weight doesn't bother me. I like being fat. The only thing it really changes is how I might get along with girls. But from my angle, it's a good way to see who is shallow. I do not want to eat healthy and I think about food a lot. I have dieted in the past, but it has made me very miserable. I am not lazy or anything. I work very hard at school and in everything I do. I just don't care about this. My mom does care more than me, but she never bothered me about it. But my stepdad brings it up a lot. Never in a mean way, but he always asks me to go to the gym and tries only buying things which do not fill me up and are overly healthy. A few weeks ago, we went to the doctor and they gave me a speech about eating better, and today, my stepdad and my mom wanted to speak to me. After my last day of school for the semester, since I'm skipping an exam week that I exempted, they talked about the doctor's meeting and said that I am going to a health camp for the literal entire summer, from early June until middle of August, all of it. I looked it up and it's just a fat camp. I was obviously really upset and I begged them not to send me, but they said that they've already paid for it and I was definitely going. I don't ever yell at my parents, but I couldn't manage a conversation, so I just left immediately, went into my room and cried. I went down later and asked very nicely if I didn't have to go and they said no. I asked why I deserved a punishment and they said it wasn't a punishment. I just left again because I wouldn't have been able to stop from screaming at them and I don't want to yell at them. From a legal perspective, can they force me to go? At 14, it seems ridiculous that they could force me to go. I'll actually be 15 halfway through. I have to take a plane. They can't legally require me to get on a plane, right? I understand if I was like 10 years old or something, but I'm a teenager now. This is my last summer before high school and it's so stupid that this is how it might be wasted. At 14 or 15, they don't need my permission at all. Please, give me your advice. Jumping into the future, there is an update. I am in New York. I had many conversations with my parents and they refused to budge. I considered leaving the house for a bit, but ultimately decided not to. I've tried not to be, but I'm honestly very angry at my parents for doing this to me, and I view them very negatively, at least much more than before. I feel like they don't care about my opinion at all. I've done research and nobody loses weight at the camp I'm going to, and again, even if they did, I don't care. I'm going to the camp tomorrow night and I'm not looking forward to it. I feel very depressed and I have not felt happy since this all began. I looked it up and it would be easy for me to not get on the plane, but I still don't want to make a scene. I am intentionally not going to try to lose any weight at camp, which I've been honest about. My parents are suddenly acting like I want to go because I told them I literally wouldn't physically fight against it and they don't care what I say or think. I have lost a lot of respect for my parents as people and I do not want to be around them anymore. Either way, I'm going tomorrow. Thanks to the people that were helpful. Many people say that it is impossible to be happy and fat, and I think those people are wrong, but I don't think they will ever change their minds. Jumping into the future, there's another update. I was taken to camp earlier this month and I did not resist going, but I was very upfront with my parents that I wasn't going to participate whenever possible. They did not take me seriously. I went on the plane and told the counselors the same thing once I got on the bus. I was very polite but honest about it. My tactic was to use peaceful, non-violent resistance until they let me go home, unless it turned out to be a crazy camp, which it wasn't. I read a book about the civil rights movement a few months ago and I based what I did off of that. Obviously, me being at a camp isn't even close to human rights, but the technique still worked. I got to my cabin and and I just stayed on my bed and politely told them that I didn't plan on doing the exercises. The counselors spoke to me nicely and then less nicely and tried to convince me to move, but they couldn't, and I'm too big to drag off of bed even if they wanted to. They were nice people and I wanted to be nice to them as well, but again, I was open and honest through everything. I just did not go to the event after I went to my cabin. I politely and calmly refused to go to the opening ceremony, exercises, meetings, activities, even though nothing was optional. When the kids in my cabin spoke or tried to convince me to come down, I also politely refused to speak to them. They then said that I wouldn't get dinner or lunch if I didn't come down and participate, and I refused, assuming that they need to feed me sometimes. I was right. They didn't give me dinner that night or breakfast because I didn't go to eat, but someone brought me a lunch the next day, even if it was a terrible, overly healthy type of thing. I was still very hungry and very bored, but I just kept imagining getting out early. That lasted for 6 days with me spending all of my time on the bed and them bringing me food. I brought books, but they took my books away, so I just sat there and entertained myself by imagining stuff. It was the most boring thing I've ever done. After a week or 6 days, I'm not sure, the headmaster, owner / leader of the camp came to me and spoke to me directly. Again, he was very nice to me and I tried to be nice back, but I was open about the fact that I wasn't doing anything until I went home. He was trying to convince me that I wanted to lose weight, but I didn't want to lose weight. The next day, he called my parents and I left for the first time to speak to them in his office. They begged me to do it, and we had a weird conference call meeting with them on the phone and the headmaster, who was there too, and they were all trying to convince me to participate and even shaming me a bit. But again, I calmly refused very simply. They said they were going to wait 3 more days to give me, quote, time to think about it. And I told them that it wouldn't make a difference, but they did it anyway. So I sat another 3 days and then an extra day waiting. After that, we had one more conference and then I was sent that night on a plane ticket home because I peacefully refused to do everything and they saw no point of keeping me there. They really tried shaming me near the end, but I told them that I couldn't feel ashamed for not doing something that they wanted me to do. I felt slightly sad about having to be a pain for the counselors or the head guy because neither did anything wrong to me, but I was very, very, very happy that I won't have to spend the whole summer there. My parents are in a sad mood since I came back and they aren't really speaking to me, but at least I'm home and I won't have to spend another month there. They also got some of their money back because I wasn't there the whole time. I appreciate all the advice I got, even if I don't agree with all of it. Thank you. I got most of my summer back. The next few updates are really shocking, starting with this first one that is kind of just a recap and pondering on everything, and then it gets a lot crazier. Is being skinny really all that great? I'm 14, 255 pounds, and I've always been very, very fat, and I honestly prefer it for the most part. It's a good way to know who's shallow and who cares about you. You don't need to worry about many other aspects of life that I feel people constantly obsess over. Has losing weight honestly made any actual impact on your life? I don't care about losing 5 to 10 years of being old, and I don't care about people treating you nicer either. I think the health stuff is over-exaggerated, and the social stuff is nonsense anyway. Then we jump into the future a little less than a year, and this is where it starts. Can my parents and school force me to take heart medication? I'm 15 and I'm a boy. I live in New York State. Several months ago, I had heartburn that was misinterpreted by doctors to be a heart attack. It wasn't. Simply put, it was a severe over-exaggeration. Since then, I've been made to take medication at home, which I don't want to because I've read about the side effects and I don't want to be taking something for an issue that doesn't exist. Since I got it originally, I just stopped taking the pills, which, long story short, my parents found out about, and it has been a very big fight with them since. They have contacted my school, a public school, and after they had a talk with me and the principal. Basically, what has been happening is I come in the morning and they force me to go into a room with a guidance counselor and an extra person to watch me swallow the pills that I need. For some time, I'd go and make myself vomit immediately after in the bathroom, and then they found out, and now I have to stay for 20 minutes and drink water. They do not even let me go to class if I refuse. How can this be legal? I'm sorry to ask here, but I literally cannot find information on this anywhere. Where would I even report this if the principal is in on it? The next update gets even more intense. I'm 15 and I am so afraid I'm going to die. I came on here once and said that I didn't need to lose weight, and I was wrong, and I'm sorry. Right now I'm 275 pounds. 2 days ago, I woke up gasping and choking for air. I couldn't breathe. This happened before, but never as intensely. I just woke up choking. It was the scariest thing in my entire life and I cried for 20 20 minutes. I'm ready to change, but I'm so afraid that I'm going to die anyway. I was ignoring a bunch of stuff and I have no idea. I have had very bad heartburn before. I tried eating less today, which I haven't done in years, and made it to 70% of the day, and then I couldn't stop after a certain point. Like my hand shook because I wanted to eat so much. I'm looking up studies that describe it and everybody seems to gain it back. Exercise is impossible. Not eating is impossible. I am so afraid. I really apologize. I'm looking at protein and carbohydrates and calorie information, and it literally makes no sense to me. There is so much conflicting information. I do not want to die. Jumping into the future, there's another update. I made some posts in the past and I made progress for the first time, so I thought that I would make an update post. I was 15 and I had something that was misdiagnosed as a heart attack. It wasn't. And then sleep apnea, which I really did have. I couldn't breathe and it scared me, so I decided to change certain things to lose weight. I did 3 main things. Number 1, calories. Counted them using a tracker which told me what I could eat. Ate stuff sort of more healthy, but still some unhealthy stuff, like I might have veggies and meat, but I would also have cookies, candies, but all below the calorie number that I could eat. I usually skip breakfast because I'm not hungry in the morning, and then I can eat 3 meals in half of the day, which is way easier for me than 3 meals throughout the whole day. Number 2, water. No drinking anything but water. This was very hard, but it worked in the end and helped a lot, especially with not going over on calories. Number 3, walking. I listen to music and I walk an hour every day. This was very hard at the start but got easy, and I might add more time soon. I started losing weight very quickly when I did this. I felt very bad for 1 week and then very good, and stayed like that physically. I don't feel that different, but still losing because I'm afraid of the breathing thing coming back. I want to get to 200 pounds and then we'll see. I'm very depressed. My parents don't talk to me anymore. They haven't for months for the most part. I don't take my medication for a misdiagnosis, and they just decided to stop talking with me about anything, even after I lost weight. They buy the food I asked them to. We just started doing this over text, and now I just make food for myself. I talk to them maybe once a week for a short conversation, and they purposely spend time out of the house so they can get away from me. They're here maybe 3 nights a week. I don't care anymore. I'm going to lose more weight and then move away when I turn 18 and never speak to them again. I'm looking forward to it. This is just an update since a lot of people message me about it. I'm still losing weight. Jumping into the future, there is one final update. After quitting fat camp and having a heart attack at 15, I dropped the weight and now I'm living my best life. 275 pounds to 170. A few years ago, I posted some messages about my experiences with obesity, my parents, and being sent to fat camp against my will. I saw somebody posting about it on Discord, so I thought that I would update. I have lost the weight. I tried over the course of about a year and a half, first losing about 40 pounds, then 50 pounds, but each time I gained it back before having to restart. Early last year, I tried again, and that attempt clicked. I have since lost all the extra weight and even put on a little muscle by lifting. I am still not used to it. I catch myself making much more room than I need to when walking by people. 4 things that made this attempt different. Number 1, I tried less, which sounds like it doesn't make sense, but I think by not obsessing over it as much as I did during the first 2 times helped me not to burn out and give up. I just counted calories without obsessing and did cardio and lifting 3 to 4 times a week. I ate probably 80% clean, 20% dirty. It feels like less of a struggle and less work. I can eat happily how I do now forever and not feel like I'm missing out on anything. That wasn't as true with the diets that I was doing before. Number 2, I moved out at 17 to live with a friend's family and don't have much of a relationship with my parents anymore, and it was easier to lose the weight when not being around them. There's a lot of stuff I didn't talk about in the earlier posts, some of which because I was too young to know what was happening. I was in denial about my situation and not pleasant to be around, but my mother and stepfather were not responsible parents and neglected me more than I realized was appropriate. There were short periods where they would be very involved in my life to overcompensate for periods when they would go on trips for weeks, several for months, and leave me alone in a house filled with junk food, which at the time I thought that I loved, but I realized was horrible. They never hurt me, but they would rarely try to be parents, and when they did, it was always in extreme ways, like sending me to the fat camp and giving me dramatic speeches after not interacting with me for long periods of time. We had many verbal fights over the last few months I was living there, and they refused to acknowledge any responsibility, even though I was acknowledging mine. Once, a woman who had been friends with my mom over the phone for over 6 years came to visit the house. She lived in another state and spoke to my mom over the phone almost daily and said that she didn't know that my mom had a son. Number 3, I have friends now who know my history and we go lifting together. It makes a big difference when you have people who like you and keep you on track. We play sports, which is a great way to exercise. A lot of dodgeball sounds cringe, but it's very fun. Number 4, I read Meditations by Marcus. It has helped me a lot. Here is some other stuff. I still take statins, although though the dosage has been lowered. I have another appointment in a few weeks, which is the first time since I have lost all the weight. I am hoping I will be able to stop them. If not, it will be what it will be. In a comment, I think I compared myself to Nelson Mandela by not exercising at fat camp, and that was very cringe. I am sorry. I had just read his biography at the time, so it was in my mind. I was 15 and dumb. I will probably look back in the future and think I am dumb now too. I am taking classes at community college, hoping to transfer to a university and graduate either in avionics or mechanical engineering or another similar field. And I'm not depressed anymore. We can get much higher and the future looks bright. I have a girlfriend now. She's a supermodel from Canada. No, you can't meet her. She goes to another school. I will be honest. I'm not going to read most of them, but there were hundreds of old messages in my inbox from people who tried to give me advice over the last few years. Thank you for the positive thoughts. If you are in the same position that I was, you can make it out. The biggest thing that I learned is that it's impossible to improve when you hate yourself. You have to care about yourself enough to want to get better. My problem was that I didn't know how. So now that you know everything, who was the jerk? This story was a roller coaster, starting from the point that he refused to do any exercise at all as a form of protest in order to prove a point and be able to be sent home early, all the way to the point that he realized he can't improve until he learns to not hate himself, but his problem was that he didn't know how. That is quite the journey. One part that he briefly mentions that I think is really interesting is Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. If you watch enough Am I the Jerk, you probably have noticed that there are quotes from time to time that come from a lot of these really old philosophers like Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and so on. And from what I'm piecing together, his problem, the fact that he didn't know how, at least to some extent, it sounds like he found it in Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, which is kind of like everything going full circle. Once we got to the part of the story where the OP was waking up gasping for air and saying that he does not want to die, the quote from Meditations that came to mind is, "How much more grievous are the consequences of anger than the causes of it?" In other words, the thing that made him so angry was that he was being sent to this fat camp, but his anger is what drove him to reject that and become even more out of shape to the point where he thought he was going to die. The consequences of his anger in this situation were far worse and far more grievous than the cause of it. So let me know if you guys have ever had any experiences like this in your own life down below. A power-hungry employee doesn't know that I am the owner. I once owned a computer store with one of my friends. As we started to grow, we found it was becoming more and more difficult to handle all the in-store repairs as well as the out-of-store work that we had coming in. We decided that we needed somebody for the front counter. Unfortunately, I went on vacation when my partner had hired her. Not that this was a problem as we knew what we needed, and I knew he could find someone. When I returned from vacation, I had some out-of-town work that needed to be done with a high-dollar client. This work took another 2 weeks, so I had not had the chance to meet the new employee. The first day back just happened to be the same day my partner started his vacation. I walk in. "Hi, you must be the new employee." The power mad bee cuts me off and says,
I don't care who you are. What can I help you with? I don't see you with a computer. What are you looking for?
I say, "Excuse me?" The power mad bee says,
You should be. What do you need? I have a lot to do to open the store.
I say, "Sorry, I don't think you understand who I am." She tells me,
You're no one important.
I say, "Oh, really? You do know I could have you unemployed in 1 hour." She tells me,
Oh yeah, whatever. I personally know the owner. He hired me personally. I doubt he would fire me. Get out of the store before I call the cops.
I say, "I doubt he would want you to treat people like trash. But yeah, that's a good idea. Let's call the cops."
Okay, here we go. I'm calling them.
"Great," I say. I pull out my cell phone and I call my partner. "Hey, I know you're on vacation, dude, but I think we have an employee problem. PMB, the power mad bee, was very rude when I walked in this morning. I attempted to tell her who I was, but she wouldn't let me get that far. Now she's calling the cops to have me removed. Yeah, I can hand you over 1 sec."
Oh, who is this? Someone who's playing the part of the owner now? I know what he sounds like.
I hand her the phone. She now has 2 phones to her head. My cell phone and the office phone, which may or may not have had the police on the line. I still don't know if she ever did call the police. I hear him laying into her. I couldn't hear the conversation. However, I did ask him later. Here's the basics. My partner said, "I basically told her I'm tired of her holier-than-thou attitude, and if she can't accept people coming into the store and interrupting her, she is not cut out to work in the store anymore. I told her, she just told told the other owner that they're not welcome. Pack up your stuff, she would no longer be needed. PMB hangs up the office phone and hands my cell phone back to me with tears in her eyes. I say, you want me to work up some termination paperwork? My partner tells me, yeah, let me know how it turns out. I have a stack of applications on my desk. I'll see you in a week. I say, hey, PMB, you got your paycheck Friday, correct? PMB nods, yes. Awesome. I owe you about $5 for the 30 minutes you wasted today. I take 10 minutes to type up the reason for the termination, all while she sits in a chair bawling like a 2-year-old. Thanks. Don't let the door smack your butt on the way out. I walk over to the register, pull out a 5, and point her towards the door. We never saw her again. Update from the future. It's become very clear from many of the comments that none of you have ever been a business owner. To each their own. Many things will happen in your life that when you tell someone else, they won't believe you. That's fine. If you don't believe, then don't believe. It doesn't bother me. So was I the jerk for firing this employee? Just the fact that this employee cut off the owner before the owner could even say anything is really all you need to know, because insert any person being in that position. If it wasn't the owner, let's say it was a customer. A customer's in that position, they come in the store, they don't have a computer, and this employee is basically going to berate them because they're wasting their time and they have a lot to do to set up the store. I mean, the whole reason you set up the store is to sell to customers. So she was obviously acting under the assumption that this was a customer, and why would you ever treat a customer like that? That could have been a customer that works for a giant business and wanted to buy a huge bulk order of 100 computers, but wouldn't want to anymore because who would want to be treated like that? Nobody. You have to really be easily agitated to immediately reach for, I'm calling the cops, based on one brief, uncomfortable moment with a customer. I've seen people get like this when a lot of bad stuff has already happened earlier that day, but from the sounds of this was at the very start of the workday. She was still setting up. So if this was your employee, would you have fired them or would you have given them another chance? Let me know down below in jerk or not a jerk and why. Before we jump into the next story, if you guys don't know, we actually have a second channel where you can hear some personal stories. There's a link to subscribe to that down below in the description. And you can of course always submit your stories as well. My new boss tries to demand that we work overtime for free. Enjoy trying to open the store with no employees. First off, I'm a non-native English speaker. Secondly, unfortunately, this story came back into my mind due to the recent death of the hero of the story. Grumpy, you will be missed. I met Grumpy in Narcotics Anonymous. He volunteered there after they helped him and became my sponsor. Seeing that I was trying to get my act together, he offered me my first job out of high school. Grumpy was a manager of a store for a company that sold everything you needed to build a house, from cement and bricks to custom-made cupboards. I started as a loader, filling trucks that were making deliveries. A little background for the company. It plays an important role later. When they started back in the early 80s, they sold everything you needed to build a brick and mortar home wholesale to professionals. During their first expansion, they got a really good reputation for their prices of power tools, custom cupboards, and landscaping, including custom-made garden furniture. The stores were basically big warehouses. In the mid-90s, they opened their doors to the general public, which accompanied by a rising trend of do-it-yourself DIY skyrocketed their sales. That brought a second, smaller wave of expansion and the opening of the online store, first only with phone orders and then later with a proper site. When I joined, they were doing a third shift on their business plan. They had cut down on things that weren't a big seller, like bricks and concrete, and were focusing more on the big sellers. Custom-made furniture, landscaping tools, and for some weird reason, plumbing. My first 8 months on the job were a dream. Grumpy was an excellent manager. Having started in the company at roughly the same age that I was and being promoted to the ranks, he had developed a very distinct managerial style. His concept was simple. If my employees are happy, they work better and provide better services, which leads to better sales. That meant while Grumpy managed one of the inner city stores, meaning medium to small size compared to the others, we were fourth in revenue, nationwide, and first in customer happiness. And then the reason for his nickname struck. While everyone called him Grumpy, a nickname he was kind of proud of, he was far from it. The reason was he had a medical condition that affected his nerves and had left him with a permanent frown on his face. He had declined a promotion due to that condition, knowing the extra stress would make his condition flare up, meaning he wouldn't be as effective as he would like. His medical condition flared up unexpectedly and Grumpy had to be hospitalized and be on sick leave for a time. Headquarters decided not to have one of Grumpy's assistants be an acting manager for the duration, but Instead, bring in a regional manager to take over the store for the duration. Let's call him Wilhelm. Wilhelm was the exact opposite of Grumpy. He was younger than Grumpy. He was in his late 20s and Grumpy was in his late 30s. He had a business degree and hadn't worked the floor at all. He was hired from the beginning as an office drone and then climbed his way to regional manager. The reason he was put in charge of our store had to do with the change of the business plan of the company. You see, the change of focus had created a lot of empty space in the stores. A supermarket chain had approached the company with an offer to rent the empty space, especially for inner city stores. The company had accepted and placed regional managers in key stores to help with integration. The thing is, the supermarket chain had a reputation of being bad employers. That was reinforced to us by one of our tellers who had worked for them for 3 years before quitting to join us. Wilhelm also didn't help. His managerial style was based in only one concept: make more money in any way possible. He started changing our schedule from monthly to weekly, changing the sales targets to unrealistic heights, and always demanded more. In the first 2 weeks, 6 inexperienced people had left, 4 quit and 2 were fired, and were replaced by young, inexperienced people that were easier to manipulate. And then the integration happened. The floor was the first to feel the problem. The supermarket opened its doors and was understaffed. Wilhelm started sending people over to help for 4 to 6 hours, while also demanding to work their regular shifts. If someone declined, he or she was written up. 2 write-ups in 6 months and you were fired. Then Wilhelm came to lay the law down in the loading bay. The loading bay was shared between the 2 stores. Wilhelm declared that we had first helped the 2 guys of the supermarket unload their trucks first because their products were perishable, and then started loading our own trucks. That would throw our delivery schedule to the wind. The loading crew worked from 5 in the morning until 1 p.m. We loaded the first trucks that had longer to travel so they would be ready to leave at 7. The company had a next day delivery policy for a 150-mile radius. What Wilhelm declared meant we couldn't start loading our trucks before 7:30, and they couldn't start their routes before 9:30. We said as much, but Wilhelm didn't care. He said we had to do both jobs. When someone inquired about overtime, Wilhelm said no. He said we already made too much money with unsocial hours between 5 and 8 and leaving early, so he wouldn't approve overtime. So from a nice environment that you wanted to work for, we all started getting miserable. We lost 10 people in the loading crew in a month because of the new rules. The new hires didn't last long. The floor was a mess and started turning personnel faster than a dollar lady of the night. Anyone who's staying is either looking for another job, is afraid of unemployment, or is too young to know better. The sales had a very small decline, but the customer happiness plummeted fast. After almost 6 months, all the old guard that was left was ready to quit, but our savior came back. Almost 6 months from the day he was hospitalized, Grumpy walks in the store to claim his rightful position. He isn't a knight in shining armor, riding a pure white horse carrying a legendary sword. He is in normal attire, slightly limping and holding a cane. We have a welcome back party and have a small glimmer of hope now that he is back. We are informed that Grumpy will be on light duties for 2 weeks before he becomes a manager again. Despite Grumpy being back, Wilhelm still remains the regional manager, which means he outranks Grumpy and makes it very clear in private meetings with all of us. If he caught us complaining to Grumpy, we were as good as gone. Still, a few of us are planning to have a meeting with Grumpy after the weeks, letting him getting his sea legs back. But another department had other ideas. During his reign of terror, the only department that Wilhelm couldn't control was the workshop. He knew that if he treated them as bad as he did to us, they would quit and the sales would go from a small decline to bottom of the barrel real quick. As I said, custom-made furniture was the #1 seller, so the head carpenter had a meeting with Grumpy on the second day about the future of the workshop. In reality, the guy spilled his beans on Wilhelm. With the pretext of catching up with the changes, Grumpy was meeting with everyone, learning what Wilhelm had done and why we had so many new staff. You could feel he was getting angrier with every meeting. He also had an eye-opening meeting with the manager of the supermarket. Finally, the time had come when he became manager again. The revenge. On his first day back as manager, Grumpy notifies everyone of a mandatory meeting after the store is closed. He has a solution, so gather in the store after closing hours, and Grumpy lays out the plan. For the next couple of days, nobody except him is coming to the store. If anyone calls us, we should direct them to him, which we did when we started getting calls about the store being closed. Grumpy's answer to headquarters was simple. The staff was working on a second job during their shifts, which is a breach of contract, so I had to fire them all and find new staff. That caught headquarters' attention because nothing of the sort was reported in the last 6 months. They asked Grumpy for evidence, which he happily provided with our written testimonies, which brought on a lot of trouble for Wilhelm. You see, Wilhelm had an arrangement with the supermarket manager. He got a kickback from our unpaid labor for the supermarket, and the manager offered the same thing to Grumpy. He also included that Wilhelm regularly declined to sign over time, which meant that if any one of us went to the labor department, the company would get a really huge fine. The aftermath. Wilhelm got quickly fired. We all received calls to interview with the company for an open position. We all received severance pay for our firing, plus most of the unpaid overtime, about 80% of it. Almost all of us went back to work with a small pay raise based on experience. The company took a long, hard look on the supermarket chain and distanced themselves from them. They stayed until their lease was over, but no shared employees anymore, and a lot of theirs jumped ship over to our side. Next time Grumpy had to take time off, one of his assistants took over. 2 of them did a stellar job, leading to being promoted in managers of other stores. Grumpy brought back his usual managerial style, leading again to the rise of sales and customer happiness. I left the job 3 years later for a better paying position, but I still remember Grumpy as one of the best managers I ever had. So, was I the jerk for the role I played in the revenge? The core issue that everything stems from is the fact that Wilhelm has a managerial style where his only goal is to make money in any way possible, but he ends up shooting himself in the foot because cutting all these corners, treating everyone bad, maybe would lead to some sort of short-term monetary gain, but in the long term, you're gonna lose. I think pretty much anyone that has worked for a long time will realize that Grumpy's philosophy is a lot more true. If you just treat people well, they're much more likely to put their heart into their work instead of trying to cut corners because you're trying to cut corners. It's such a simple concept that somehow so many people that get into a position of power seem to completely miss. And if you were to ask Wilhelm, they would probably justify it by saying, well, I wanted to show short-term results because I'm not going to stick around here for the long term. And if that's where he's coming from, then there's a problem with the incentive structure of the company itself that allows a situation like that to happen in the first place. So let me know what you guys think of this revenge down below. Was it justified or was it going too far? And jerk or not a jerk, and why? Am I the jerk for refusing to support my son's pregnant girlfriend until she takes a paternity test? My son is 24 years old and his girlfriend is also 24. They've only been together for 6 months and she is apparently 4 months pregnant with his baby. They've actually been friends since high school, and so my husband and I have known her for a few years as well. She is a lovely girl, but honestly, she is not someone I had hoped would be the mother to my first grandchild. First of all, she is a recovering addict and a lush, and while she says she has been clean for 3 years, a relapse is always possible. She only finished high school with her GED, and she now works as a waitress full-time. Her parents died years ago, so she is largely on her own. Our family is considerably better off, and my son is joining his father's business, meaning his salary will be quite high and will only continue to grow. Since my son first told us she is pregnant, it can't escape my mind that he may not really be the father, and that she picked him out of potential others because he would be the best in terms of support. My son is pushing us to help her with some of her pregnancy expenses, and I told him that we would, under the condition that she get a paternity test first. He completely blew up at that, accusing us of disliking her, which is untrue, and not wanting us to be grandparents, also untrue. He says that he loves her and he trusts her, and that he can't wait to meet his baby. I get that, but I think he's being idealistic. If he wants our support, we want a paternity test first. If the baby is truly his, then we would be happy to welcome her into our family, and we would be happy to help her out. There have been a lot of responses to this post, and it's a pretty even mix of jerk and not a jerk. So clearly, the only thing everyone can agree with is that it's gotten complicated. I've gotten messages calling me an idiot, calling my son an idiot. I have gotten messages from the MGTOW subreddit telling me that the girlfriend is clearly a lying sociopath. I have also gotten messages from men who have found out their child wasn't theirs after several years, who wish they had found out sooner. It's a lot to read and a lot to think about. Many people have called out my attitude towards this girl, and I'll be honest, it's making me think. Jumping into the future, there is an update. After my original post, I talked to my son and asked him what kind of financial help he had in mind. According to him, since she does not have insurance, many of her medical costs were adding up, and he wanted to help her with those. A lot of people asked me why my adult son was reliant on us, but to us, that's not unusual. He is a recent graduate, and while he will be making a decent salary soon, he has just entered the workforce and does not have much in the way of savings. Plus, our family has always believed in helping each other out. If my daughter was pregnant, we would no doubt help her. I expressed my desire for the paternity test for his benefit, but he would not budge on that. I tried to warn him of the countless stories of fathers duped into parenting parenting children that weren't his, but he was certain. A couple weeks later, his girlfriend actually reached out to me herself. We met up and she told me she was embarrassed he had asked for financial help on her behalf, as she did not want to take on any assistance. This surprised me as I assumed she was the one pushing for the money. She was uncomfortable with the paternity test idea, but said she would look into it if it bridged the peace between me and my son. With COVID, the paternity test never ended up happening. It just wasn't a priority. Over the past few months, I have been talking with them more and more, and my husband and I bought them a substantial gift for their new home as a gesture of apology and goodwill. We did offer financial help, but my son refused it. By the time the baby was born, I had gotten to know his girlfriend better and was warming up to her joining our family. She truly is a delightful young woman, more so than I gave her credit for. The baby was born 7 weeks ago. It's a boy, and my son is absolutely thrilled. I have not got to meet him yet, but I have gotten to see him over video chat and in photos. He looks like my son. It's not an exact resemblance, but I can see my son in this little boy's face, enough that paternity doubts are firmly in the back of my mind. Truthfully, I have fallen in love with this little boy, and watching my son grow into becoming a father has been the proudest thing in my life. If I had missed this, I would have never forgiven myself. So, was I the jerk for refusing to support my son's pregnant girlfriend until she took a paternity test originally? In this situation, I don't think the OP is a jerk for asking for proof before providing financial support, but the thing that does come off as being a jerk is perceiving someone only as an amalgamation of their negative traits. I mean, even though the girl is an addict, she is recovering, and being clean for 3 years is a big accomplishment. Of course, a relapse is always possible, but it's your money. You can request a paternity test if you want without casting judgment or trying to assume what her intentions were by saying because she has all these issues in the past, she's most likely faking the pregnancy because my son's family has more money. I could see situations where it was more directly related, like she was a known scammer or she had done something sort of related in the past, but if she's a recovering addict, she probably doesn't want to go back in that direction, and that's probably why she was shocked to find out that the son was asking the parents for money because that's not what she wanted. With these type of situations, there's so much nuance, it's always hard to tell unless you actually meet these people. We're just going off of what we've seen here. So what do you think of this whole thing? Do you think the OP was originally a jerk or not a jerk, and why? Let me know down below. Can my parents force a paternity test? My wife was assaulted. She got pregnant and the baby could be mine or the person who assaulted her. We decided to keep the baby and raise it as mine. We never wanted to have a paternity test done on the baby because this could be devastating to her relationship with my wife. I am a massive moron, and after my daughter was born, I let slip to my parents that she might not be mine biologically. I tried to backtrack, but my parents kept pushing and pushing until my wife sat them down and explained the situation. They do not believe her. They think that she cheated and that she's using me. Now my parents have approached me about taking a paternity test. They want me to contest paternity and leave my wife. I do not want to. I have made a commitment to my wife and my daughter, and I stand by it. I trust my wife, my parents don't. They told me that if I refuse, they will go to the courts and compel me to do a paternity test to absolve me of responsibility for the baby. They want me to leave my wife regardless. I am planning to cut contact with my parents over this, but is there any way that they can legitimately force me to do a paternity test? Is there something I can do to prevent this or fight them? We are located in Rhode Island. Update from the future. Pretty soon after I posted, I received a letter in the mail from a lawyer that basically said that my parents were demanding a paternity test on the basis of grandparents' rights. I knew from my post that it was unlikely that a lawyer would take this case, so I googled the law firm and the lawyer's name. I couldn't find the lawyer's name anywhere, but the law firm was real, so I reached out to them. The letter was a fake, and the law firm was not happy. They asked for the letter and are pursuing some sort of legal action against my parents. I don't know exactly what's happening as I have not been in contact with my parents for a while. In other news, my daughter was recently diagnosed with a very minor skin condition that is fairly uncommon and that I also have, which means she's most likely mine after all. We still won't be doing a paternity test anytime soon, but it was helpful for our peace of mind. So, what do you think we should do from here? Pretending to be a lawyer that works at a law firm that you have no association with sounds like a pretty big deal. I'm guessing that's something the law firm is probably going to want to sue for any damages to their reputation. When it comes to the parents, it sounds like both parents here, the OP and the wife, are at peace with not taking the test. I think most people out there would take the test no matter what, but That's their decision and that's what they want to do. They don't want the test. And grandparents' rights, I don't even know if that's a real thing, but clearly if it is, it's not a very strong thing to go off of because they had to fake a lawyer in order to get action taken. So let me know what your theories are on this whole situation. What do you think is going to happen? Let me know down below. A rude customer comes into my business and demands to speak to the manager, but I'm the owner. He doesn't believe that a woman could own a business like this, since my business is in a male-dominated industry. So he continues to demand to see a male manager, one that he had met before, and that's when things take a turn. Here's what happened. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell to turn on notifications. This happened about a year ago, right after I had opened 2 niche hobby shops. It's an incredibly male-dominated hobby. My typical clients are retired white dudes driving nice Audis and BMWs. I am a small 30-year-old chick covered literally head to toe with tattoos, but none on my face though. A new customer to me walks in. Apparently, he had been in before while I was out of the shop and one of my male managers helped him. He walks into my shop and when I smile and greet him with a, "Hi, how are you?" he kind of just grunts at me. Okay, whatever. Sometimes people just want to be left alone to browse. I stay on my computer finishing up some ordering and let him wander a bit. He is taking his time but is clearly a bit agitated. So I ask if he is looking for anything in particular or if he is just browsing. He just looks at me, a pregnant pause where I begin to wonder if I should speak up. Like I said, old 1%ers are my bread and butter. When he finally breaks the silence, it's not with a polite response but with a gruff, "Where's your manager?" I have been in retail for 15 years. I'm used to the people who just don't remember their manners. But this question doesn't make me think, oh, he's looking for my boss. It makes me think, oh, he's looking for one of my employees. So I start to ask a couple qualifying questions. I'm the only one here today. What can I help you with?
No, I want to speak to the man that is in charge. I'll wait.
He says in a very condescending way, "Sir, I am in charge. What can I help you with?"
No, there is a man who helped me here last week and he and I were discussing a project and I'd like to speak with him directly, so I can tell him what I want ordered.
This is where I started to get a little snippy. Yay for working for yourself. I was frustrated that he was speaking to me in such a tone that he couldn't seem to understand that I am in charge. Well, sir, I am in charge here. I do the ordering, so what did you need me to order?
He lets you do the ordering?
Sir, I can see we aren't going to get anywhere. If you would like to come back later, you are more than welcome. But considering you won't speak to me and would rather speak to a male employee, maybe it would be best for you to come back at another time. Obviously, this enrages the entitled jerk and he gets so red that I was sure he would pop at any second. He starts sputtering and he takes a couple steps towards me. I have a particular character flaw where I forget that I am 5 feet tall, so I stand my ground. My mother calls it a lack of self-preservation. He demands my boss's phone number. Now I realize maybe I wasn't clear enough. I get cut off. Now, being ignored and interrupted are 2 of my biggest pet peeves, and this man has accomplished both in a relatively short amount of time. So I hand him a business card and walk off. He immediately calls a number and my cell phone starts ringing, so I answer. "Thank you for calling. You've reached the store owner at my store." I say all of this while staring at him right in the face. I'm petty as hell, and even this made me wonder if I had gone too far. He stormed out and I never saw him again. Still cracks me up when I remember his red, veiny face staring at me with wide eyes. So, am I the jerk? Did I go too far? This has got to be so frustrating to be in a situation like this where people just assume that you couldn't possibly be the person in charge no matter what you try to tell them. Sometimes even when you speak clearly and you tell people a certain thing, the actual words themselves aren't getting through, so you have to say the same exact thing but just in other words. So in this case, the thing that might have cut through was just saying, "I'm the owner. I literally own this place. That's what I mean when I say I'm in charge. I own this store," rather than "I do the ordering" or "what other employee do you want to talk to?" It's always more obvious in retrospect, and maybe that wouldn't even solve this, but that would have been the best shot of clearing this up in the moment. Short-term solutions aside, it does suck that this type of stereotyping even happens in the first place. I think some people just perceive what certain people would be into, and that is their worldview. They won't look at it in any other way. So if this was you and this was your business, and one of your customers acted like this with you, what would you do? Let me know down below, and jerk or not a jerk and why. Before we jump into the next story, don't forget to subscribe to the second channel where you can hear some personal stories of mine, and you could submit your own stories too. Link in the description. Am I the jerk for not attending my friend's wedding on the day of my family's death anniversary? I'm a 35-year-old female, and 7 years ago, I lost my husband, daughter, and mother to a car accident. They were hit by by a drunk driver that drove through a red light and killed all of them on impact. Their deaths greatly affected me, and if it weren't for my friends and years of therapy, I would be in a much lower place. I am thankful for their support and have been able to process my grief properly. 2 years ago, I took a job offer that provided more benefits than my current one and moved far away from my city to another. I travel back to occasionally meet up with friends and of course to visit my family's graves on their death anniversary. It's a 7-hour car drive or around an hour by plane. Due to COVID last year, I drove to avoid contact with people and stayed in my old house. This year, I plan to do the same thing but ran into an issue with my friend having her wedding in my old city. My 33-year-old friend Amy announced that she was engaged last year to her boyfriend of 3 months. My friend group and I were quite shocked as we had never met him, nor did we know she was dating anyone as we usually tell each other, but nonetheless we congratulated her and we were happy for her. They were supposed to have their wedding last year but couldn't due to COVID and postponed it to this year. We are not in the US, by the way, and COVID cases are now less than 10 here in my country. We are allowed gatherings of less than 15 people, and that is what Amy decided to do for her wedding. About a week ago, Amy called me privately to tell me her plans for her wedding. She told me that she is having it on the same day of my family's death anniversary and would like me to not visit their graves and just attend the wedding instead. I was quite shocked that the wedding was planned that specific day and questioned as to why she picked that day. Amy told me she just liked the numbered date and told me that I can't just gatekeep a certain day. Then I asked her why can't I go visit my family's grave. She told me she doesn't want my sadness and grief to take attention at her wedding. I was incredibly stunned at what she said. I know I am quite emotional, but I know how to compose and behave myself at certain events. Here's where I think I am the jerk. I told Amy that unfortunately I will not miss out on visiting my family's graves. I tried to ask for a compromise and told her if my emotions were that much of a problem, I'll attend their graves after the wedding was over. She said she wants my support for the entire day and dedicate it towards her, but she'll think about my offer. It's been a week and I have not heard from her. I feel like I should just go to the wedding to keep the peace as I owe it to her, especially after all the support and love she gave after my family's death, but it still doesn't feel right to just attend the wedding and forget about my family. Would I be the jerk if I told her I won't be attending the wedding at all if she hasn't reached a decision? But before you decide, there's an update from the future. I did what some of you suggested and called my other friends to let them know what Amy had asked of me. They were quite livid and angry for me as they had no idea what Amy was planning for the wedding. We arranged a Zoom call with her the next day to discuss why she is being so insensitive to me. Well, the call was quite the battle. It started off calm and then Amy just blew up. You guys were right when you said that Amy was jealous of the attention that I had received during the time of my family's death anniversary. Her wedding was a way to shift the attention towards her. She tried to explain to us, by having the wedding on that day, it will turn a negative situation into a positive one. When she realized she wasn't convincing enough, it felt as though a mask had fallen from her face as she started yelling and insulting me. She said that she is tired of having to play the supportive friend role and that it's been 7 years. I should just get over it by now or go join my family in the ground. My friend lost her anger and called her every name in the book. I'm honestly shocked and disappointed at the person who used to be my friend. It breaks my heart knowing I lost another person in my life, but I guess you guys are right in the sense that she never really was a friend. I now look back at our friendship and realize that it was often one-sided on my part. I wish it didn't take me so long to realize it. No one in our friend group of 6 people are going to her wedding now. We have decided to go no contact with Amy and block her on all social media. My friends have offered to go visit my family's graves together with me. I accepted, and we are now planning to also make a scrapbook with my family's pictures. For once, I am actually looking forward to this day, and we'll start to plan more eventful activities like this. Thank you once again to everyone for helping me through this, and please remember, do not drink and drive. I am begging you, please don't. Drive safely, everyone. So in the end, am I the jerk for not attending my friend's wedding on the day of my family's death anniversary? I think I, along with many people in the responses, were on the same wavelength when it comes to what they assumed the story was going to be when they first read the title. I really thought it was just going to be a coincidence or an accident or something, but the friend actually specifically chose that date because she was trying to turn a negative into a positive, and as a side bonus, she also likes that number of day. That's a really strange thing to do without talking to that person first, the person whose negative it is. It's the OP's negative day here. One of the top responses also interpreted it as that same same thing initially. I read the title and thought it would be a nuanced tale. Perhaps the friend was unaware or forgot what the date meant after so many years. Perhaps it was the only date available after having to reschedule due to COVID, and the OP could have visited the graves and gone to the wedding, but in their grief couldn't handle witnessing any happy occasion on this date. Thus brings us to a sad tale of an OP that needed help moving past their understandably huge grief. But no, the friend is downright evil and stupid. Picked the date to purposely mess with the OP, didn't have the brain cells to realize ordering someone to not even visit their family graves wasn't going to fly. So even if she was trying to turn something that was a negative into a positive, and if she just really liked that date based on the number for some reason, why would you tell somebody they can't visit their family's graves on that day? Then the OP makes a suggestion, well, what about if I go visit them after the wedding? The OP is basically trying to compromise every way they can, and there's not even a clear response to that. If this really is like the OP says, all about attention, then that is a pretty sad way to get attention. But let me know how you see the situation down below, and jerk or not a jerk, and why. My wife told her friends that she settled for me, and I'm not sure what to do. We have a perfect marriage. We've been together for 9 years, married for 4. We rarely fight and we're often intimate. We go out on date nights, send memes to each other, the works. Recently, we got news that her ex-boyfriend overdosed and passed away. Now, my wife has no connection to him, so we expressed our condolences to his family over text and nothing more. She often goes out with her friends and I always let her. I have no problem with it because I used to trust her 100%. I had to work late, so I told my wife that if she wants, she can call her friends over to our place since I wouldn't be around. Well, the rains were heavy and our office was told to leave early because some light flooding was taking place on the roads. I reached home and I could tell her friends were there, so I quietly went to our room unnoticed. Everyone was speaking quite loudly though, so I could hear a lot, and the ex-boyfriend came up in the conversation. My wife said that 4 years into our relationship, she got a call from her ex-boyfriend, who lived in a trailer, offering to help her see the world. She said she had a bag packed and was ready to leave, but in the end decided not to and settled for the stability that I was giving her. I didn't know about any of this. She never told me, and she says that she apparently settled for me. One of her friends asked if she ever regretted her choice, and she said that she used to, but not recently. I guess that's it, right? I'm not unstable enough for her to be attracted to me. She has to settle for someone like me. That one word just keeps revolving in my head. I slipped out of the house and went to a cafe to gather my thoughts, but got a call from her asking me where I was, that I was due home half an hour ago. I went back and she greeted me with a hug and a kiss as always, but I wasn't really into it, and she asked me why my mood was off. I mumbled something like stress from work and went to bed, skipping dinner and our usual alone time, except I couldn't sleep. I woke up a few hours later into the night and sat on the balcony thinking about how I'm not good enough for her, about how I'm sure she doesn't love me. I know she at least loves me a little, but even for that I have no guarantee. It's the next day now. I didn't sleep much last night and my wife is still asleep. I didn't tell anyone anything about what she said because I just can't. What do I do here, guys? Should I even talk to her? Divorce? Is there any hope for us moving forward? Does she even want to move forward? I don't know. I'm sorry for how jumbled up this is. My head is not really in a good place right now. Jumping into the future, there is an update. I made a post the other day about my wife saying something jarring. Some people asked for an update, so here it is. Well, immediately after the revelation, first I drove to a nearby town and took 2 days just for me and my thoughts. I called in sick from work and I told my wife that I was visiting a cousin. I then read all the comments you guys had for me. I really wanted to reply to some, but the thread was locked. But I nevertheless read each one and it was a lot of mixed advice. Everyone was advising me to talk to her, but everyone had different views on what to say to her. Some said to just ask for a divorce. Some said ask her what she meant. Some defended her and told me that I misunderstood everything. I decided to go for the middle option. Yesterday, I finally confronted her about it. I walked in and she came up to me for our hug, but I didn't really give one back. She asked me what was wrong and I told her we had to talk. I sat her down. She could tell I was sad and worried, and I asked her if she was happy with me. She said of course she was. I asked her if she loved me, and if she had done so through the entire course of our relationship. She was confused and said of course she did, and asked me where this was coming from. I told her that I heard her with her friends a few days ago. I heard how she was willing to leave me after 4 years to be with her ex, and how she claimed to have settled for me. She teared up and said she didn't mean it like that, to which I asked how she meant it. She said that by settled for, she didn't mean she thought she could do better and was dating down, but that she made up her mind to stay with me because I was the better person. I told her that 4 years into our relationship, there shouldn't have been a question in the first place, and brought up the fact that she said she had a bag packed. She started crying and said that that was an exaggeration on her part, that she only considered it, and that it was in a moment of weakness when we were having a fight and were briefly on break. Her ex called her because he heard about our fight through a friend, and they spoke on the phone for about an hour, in which she flirted with her, put me down, and offered to show her the world. She said she had a choice between going with her ex or reconciling with me, and she chose me because she loved me and always will. She said that 4 years ago she was a weaker person, that I made her stronger and better. I then brought up the fact that she said she regretted it but hadn't done so recently. I asked her what she meant by recently. She said that she regretted her choice for only a month after the offer was made because she had thoughts about what could have been, but stopped when she realized she had the best moments of her life with me. I asked her if anything happened between her and anyone else through the course of our relationship, to which she said that she never cheated on me and never will, and I believe her. We were both crying at this stage and we just hugged and sat together. She apologized for what she said and for what she was like 5 years ago. I apologized for listening in on a private conversation without telling her and for doubting that she loved me. I'm really happy that it was nothing but a misunderstanding, and I'm glad we were able to come out stronger. Some people mentioned that I should get a DNA test for the kids, but we don't have any kids, so that's not a problem. Also, she mentioned possibly having survivor's guilt, so we're going to look into that too. So what do you think we should do from here? I know most people think that this is a happy ending and everything is fine and the OP is happy with the outcome as well, but something about this doesn't feel right to me. It sounds like she's an expert in knowing what he would want her to say, and she just said the perfect combination of words to disarm him, but not really answer anything. The real answer in plain English would be, I wasn't sure about you, I was into him, but I chose you. And maybe that's what some of you got out of her explanation, but that's not really what I got from it. Somebody else who sees it a little bit differently said, this is not a good update, OP. You have effectively chosen to let your wife control the narrative without any supporting evidence, and you've chosen to swallow your suspicions in order to keep up the facade of having a good marriage. Your wife's story is vague and extremely suspect. You have decided to not look deeply into this or question her much in the hopes of pretending the whole thing never happened, but it's just rug sweeping, and I have to wonder how long before those bags of hers will get packed for someone else. There's not much point saying anything else because you don't seem like you take on board anything that hints your wife might have been less than honest with you instead of looking at things analytically. I'll just urge caution anyway because I fear things will not end well. And to counter that, maybe she is completely telling the truth as she sees it, and the OP is completely satisfied with her answer in every way. But the question I have is, what if he never found this out? She just never ever would have told him? I mean, this is not a minor thing. This is pretty huge. Would you yourself be okay with knowing the person you were with for 9 years was about to leave you, and literally or metaphorically, either one had their bags packed ready to go out the door, and the way they rationalized their decision was because they settled for you? Something about that just doesn't sit right, but maybe you see this completely differently. Let me know how you interpret the situation down below, and jerk or not a jerk, and why. An entitled mom and her son eat poisonous berries despite my warning signs. I'm not sure if this is entitled per se or just plain stupidity, but this happened yesterday morning. So for some background, I live in Southern California, very close to the beach. Needless to say, I encounter a lot of locals and tourists. On the right side of my property across the street, there are shops, a cafe, and a bus stop. Now, on my property, I have a hollyberry bush, which is poisonous. Now, they taste like cherries and have a cinnamon-like aftertaste. So a person that doesn't know about the plant would have no idea of this. The side effects of the berries are nausea, disorientation, diarrhea, vomiting, and severe stomach cramps. Due to my house being on the historic registry and nature protection laws, I can't just remove the bush because some of the birds pick at it and eat from it. I know the berries and leaves aren't poisonous to some species of birds and other critters like squirrels and chipmunks. Anyway, because of this, I have 2 signs that say "Do not eat" and "Danger" with a skull and crossbones. The fact that I have a sign with danger that has a hazard skull and bones deter most people, except for this persistent mom and her boy last morning. So it's around 10:30 a.m. and I take my trash out. This mom, who looked about 40 years old, had 2 kids with her, a teen girl who's between 14 and 16 maybe, and a little boy who is between 6 and 8 years old. The mom and the boy are the entitled/stupid ones here. The teen girl was actually nice. The entitled boy says,
"Oh mommy, look, the berries." "Well,
Wow, I didn't realize berries grow here. Let's get some. I ask her to read the signs that say don't eat them. She scoffs and says, it's not like you need all these berries. You should be nice and give them to my kids. Don't be greedy. Mommy, when are we going to have the berries? Right now. Teen girl, do you want any? No. Mom, I think they're...
She gets cut off by the mom who says,
okay then.
because I'm older, I couldn't run fast enough to catch them. The mom and son broke a branch off the berry bush. Then they started running and scarfing down the berries and went to the bus stop across the street with the teen girl reluctantly following. I was yelling to get her attention for nearly 20 minutes. But after the mom and the boy started getting overly sweaty and acting weird, the teen came to talk to me. She said, sir, what's wrong with them? Those berries are poisonous. I tried to warn your mom and your brother, but it's too late. The teen started to cry, thinking that they were going to die. I comforted her, saying they'll live, but they're just going to be very, very sick. Soon after, I went to my house to get seltzer tablets and water bottles to help, but by the time I came back, both the mom and the son finished all the berries, and the boy threw up all over his shirt. The mom came back with obvious signs of throwing up herself and to yell at me when I pointed to the signs that said danger and do not eat, and that this was her fault. She flipped the bird and then left. The teen just said, sorry. I gave her the seltzer tablets and she went into the cafe to get paper towels to clean up her brother, but by the time she came back, the mom vomited too. They all got on the bus and I haven't seen them since. There's a little update from the future. There's been a lot of people asking me about the berries in my house. So I bought my house 50 years ago and I didn't know that the berries were poisonous. Despite me having signs and warning people for all these years, people still managed to eat them. And yes, many people have gotten sick, but due to my house being on the historic registry, I can't remove the bush. So I have to do the best I can do to warn others, but people still eat them. So could I have done something more? Am I the jerk? So basically buying this house is like buying a part-time job. You just have to keep constantly watching to make sure people don't eat your berries all the time. And I'm guessing it's not for legal reasons because you have signs that say don't eat these berries. So I doubt that they would be able to sue you. Maybe some of you guys would know about that. But the OP obviously cares even if they don't get along with every single person that tries to come and eat the berries. I mean, the OP here actually brought out the water and the seltzer tablets even when the mom and her kid just took off with a branch and told her, it's not like you need all these berries, you should be nice and give them to my kids, don't be greedy. As if this was something that had to do with being greedy. No matter what the mom thinks, the mom knew that the OP here, the original poster, owned this bush. And the owner of this bush was saying don't eat these berries, but she decided to do it anyway because she assumed the reason the owner was saying no is because she wanted more berries for herself. This is such a ridiculous situation, but let me know how you would handle the situation down below and jerk or not a jerk and why. My girlfriend got implants and her entire personality changed, and I no longer feel attracted to her in the same way I was before the surgery. Here's what happened. As the title says, my girlfriend and fiancé of 2.5 years recently got breast enhancement surgery. She's been saying she wanted to do it ever since we first began dating, and while I expressed to her I didn't think it was necessary, I loved the way she looked before, I always said I would support whatever decision she made because it's her body and she's the one who has to live in it. About a year ago, her mother died after a long battle with cancer, in which she actually went into remission after a double mastectomy, but then the cancer eventually came back and metastasized to her pancreas. It was a horribly painful and unpleasant experience for everyone in her family. I had met my girlfriend after her mom went into remission and after the surgery, so I wasn't there with her for the first battle, which from what I've heard was very traumatic and painful in its own way. When her mother passed, she inherited a fairly large sum of money. Nothing crazy, but enough to put a down payment on a house and finally pay for the surgery she wanted. When she told me she had made the appointment to meet with a plastic surgeon, I was supportive, but again reinforced that I love the way she looked now and suggested that maybe her desire to do this now was connected to her grief because of her mother passing. She pretty much dismissed that notion since she said she wanted to get implants since she was in high school before her mom ever had cancer or the mastectomy. Fair enough. Fast forward about 6 months ago to the surgery and it goes off without a hitch. Because she was recovering for about a month or so, I didn't really see the finished product right away, and then when I did, they were much bigger than I expected. She told me that there was still swelling and that they would go down and it would look more natural. And the swelling did go down, but they never really looked natural to me. Maybe because I was just so accustomed to the way they looked before the surgery that I am having trouble seeing them any other way. For the past few months, our bedroom life has been okay, but it definitely has dwindled down a bit. bit. We couldn't really do the deed while she was recovering, and after she was feeling up to it, we overcompensated a bit by doing it a lot, but it was still before I had an idea of what they looked like, since when we did it, she would still be in a sports bra and or baggy t-shirt that stayed on during, and I was very cautious not to grab at them or anything since they were still tender for so long after. Eventually, she completely recovered, and immediately I wasn't thrilled, but I lied and said I thought they looked great. The thing is, I don't hate them or anything. The part where I started losing attraction to her has been that since she got the surgery, she's getting a lot more attention from random strangers, which I've never minded. She's gotten attention from strangers in the past too. She's a beautiful woman now and before, but since the surgery, she seems so much more receptive to the attention that it just becomes a total turnoff for me. I didn't initially bring it up because I thought maybe I was just being paranoid, and even if I wasn't, it would likely be regarded that way and dismissed either way. But eventually I started to make little comments here and there when she would flirt back with the delivery guy or whatever. Nothing terrible, but like, not sure he needs a tip after all, or something like that. She got annoyed, and eventually I did bring up my discomfort, and she did what I assumed she would, which was accuse me of being paranoid and reading into things and saying that what I thought was happening was not happening. And then a couple of weeks ago, I found out that while out with her friends, she was convinced to enter a wet t-shirt contest. A friend of mine happened to be at the bar they were at and just sent me a text telling me how great my girlfriend's honkers looked. He was joking and later said he framed it that way because he was uncomfortable letting me know, but knew he needed to let me know in case I wasn't aware. When I confronted her about it, she didn't understand why I was upset, which is symptomatic of this entire personality change that she seems to have undergone since the procedure. I tried to explain that if she had told me that was happening, I probably would have been fine, but the secrecy and just her general dismissiveness of my concerns and enjoying the extra attention was hurtful. She seemed to think that because she won the wet t-shirt contest, I should just be okay with it and that I'm lucky to have her. This simply isn't the person I fell in love with. I know I might be overreacting a bit, but I didn't love how the surgery turned out to begin with, and now this entire personality shift has been jarring enough to make me lose interest in being intimate with her at all. For the past 2 weeks, we've only done the deed twice, and I've even had to reject her advances. I tried to be as nice as possible, but when I tell her I'm not in the mood, she now gets very angry and frustrated and kind of throws mini tantrums, which is also very new. Like she thinks she's doing me a favor by even wanting to do it with me, and I am now somehow ungrateful. I've had some of my friends, male and female alike, mimic this kind of sentiment when I've tried to discuss it, hence bringing it up here. I believe the person I fell in love with is still there somewhere, but I might just be kidding myself. I'm at the point where I want to suggest couples counseling, but the one time I remotely touched on the subject, she was not receptive to the idea. I don't know what else to do though. She's like a completely different person now, and I don't like that person very much. Jumping into the future, there is an update. After the post, I was still uncertain as to what to do. I didn't want to spring anything on her as I felt from her perspective it might seem like my frustrations and concerns were coming out of nowhere unless she provoked something, and I didn't want to bring up the past after as much time had already gone by because it felt pretty petty of me to do so. I guess what I didn't realize at the time is that I had become pretty distant and terse with her, which she brought up pretty quickly, as well as the fact that I was no longer interested in initiating anything with her and completely unreceptive to any advances that she made. I told her flat out that her personality had completely changed, and I was having a lot of second thoughts about the relationship. She got very upset and asked me why I didn't mention anything. I told her that I had tried to multiple times, and she was completely dismissive of it and accused me of being jealous or paranoid. I asked her, when have I ever been either of those things throughout our relationship? And she had to admit that I have never been a jealous or paranoid person in the past. While she admitted that, she still said that she felt her personality was still the same, and that while she may not know the reason for my perception, it was still wrong. She apologized for accusing me of being jealous, but said I'm wrong. It was weird because it felt like suddenly it got turned on me, and that somehow it was all on me. I was pretty stunned and felt like again she was being dismissive of my viewpoints. She said she didn't know what else to say. We agreed to put a pin in it for the night as I was kind of speechless, and talking to her felt a bit like talking to a wall anyhow. That night she tried to initiate again and I said no. I kind of snapped at her. I was quite flummoxed and said something to the effect of, "Wow, you didn't hear a single word I said tonight, did you?" And apparently that broke her. She became so aggressive and hostile in a way that I had never experienced before. She was hysterical, screaming, thrashing, throwing the pillows and bedding around wildly, knocked over a lamp that broke, and that didn't slow her down. Then she started pushing me and telling me to get the heck out and that she never wants to see me again. At first, I was resistant, pleading with her to calm her down, but she was just getting more and more aggressive. So I grabbed my wallet and my keys. I ran out to my car in my socks and boxers. I could still hear her slamming doors from inside of my car outside of our house, her house. I just drove around all night thinking. I was shaking. I was genuinely scared. I was angry. I think I was in shock. I didn't have my phone, so I couldn't call a friend or my parents to go to their house, and I didn't want to show up in the middle of the night under these circumstances anyway. I just drove around all night and I didn't sleep. I waited until about 8 a.m. to go back to the house, which was around when she would leave to go to work, but her car was still there. So I drove and got breakfast and coffee at a drive-thru, and when I came back an hour later, she had eventually left. By this point, I'm feeling pretty calm. I go inside to grab some of my things and the entire living room is just a mess. Chairs tipped over, the coffee table completely shifted out of place, a plant ripped from a pot with dirt everywhere. You can tell she's trying to clean it up a little, but didn't get very far. I went to our bedroom where my phone and my clothes were, and in the middle of the hallway, on the way to the bedroom, was a pile of all of my things, including my phone, which had a broken screen. Fortunately, it was still functioning, so I called into work and I spent the next 4 to 5 hours packing up a bunch of my stuff and loading it into my car. I also called a friend of mine and drove over to his house. He said I could crash with him for a bit while I figure out what to do next. Later that day, I sent her a text saying we should talk, and she responded with there was nothing to talk about and that she thinks it would be better for both of us if I find somewhere else to stay for the time being. I explained that I had already done so and was staying with my friend, and then she went radio silent. She didn't respond to that or any of the follow-up texts I sent. About a week after all of this, she sent me a text that simply said I need to figure out a time to come and pick up the rest of my things. I asked if she would be there so we could talk, and she said she had nothing to say to me and I should come and get the rest of my things when she isn't there. So I tried calling her and she didn't answer. I sent her a text asking her if she was done with us, and she said yes. I thought I made that clear, which maybe she did. I thought it was just an episode and we would at least talk. Later that week, I went and picked up the rest of my things and sent a text saying I left my keys on the counter. She said she was getting the locks changed anyway. I've known this woman for nearly 3 years, and all of this along the way is new. She was always communicative and rarely hostile. She might pout or be passive aggressive, but this felt like a full-blown tantrum. She was seething like a feral animal or something. She was completely unapologetic and calculatingly cold in a way that she'd never been before. A few weeks later, after moving into my own apartment, I found out that she was already seeing someone new. I don't know if she started seeing him while we were together. It wouldn't shock me. At some point in the last year, she just stopped respecting me. And when I think back, there were probably signs before the surgery, maybe even wanting to get the surgery. I don't know. The whole thing feels like such a blur. I think I may have been in denial for a while. Maybe I'm just telling myself that now to feel better about it. I have not heard from her in weeks, and I have not tried to contact her on my end either. I did receive a missed call from her in the middle of the night about a week ago, but there was no message or text, and I didn't bother following up to see what she wanted. I'm not ready to speak with her again. I don't know when or if I'll ever be. The last couple of weeks with her after the big blow up were the worst days of my life. I've never felt so meaningless or disregarded, and she was the person who I trusted most in the world at one point. Anyway, sorry this isn't a more positive update, but a few people had asked. I would have posted it sooner, but it's taken me a while to be comfortable talking about what happened. I still get upset thinking about it. I'm hoping that writing it out would help, but honestly, I'm just sad and upset again right now. Fortunately, I have my whole life ahead of me, and I am fortunate in that I still have plenty going for me. I definitely feel more cynical now than I did before, which sucks, but I'm hoping that passes. Jumping into the future, there is a final update. I can't imagine many people care, but I got a lot of requests for an update, so here it is for those who care. My ex and I are now friends. She actually finally got into therapy and has really been more like the person I thought I knew. She said she realized that she was acting out because her mom died, which I tried to discuss with her, and also there were some issues in our relationship I was unaware of, which admittedly I did not try to discuss because I was unaware of them. She expressed to me that because of my personality, which is pretty even-keeled and placid placid, it can come off as indifferent or even judging. For a while, she was feeling like I didn't find her attractive anymore, which was pretty surprising to me because I always made an effort to let her know how gorgeous I thought she was, but I guess my behavior didn't always convey it even if my words did, which is on me and something I have discussed in therapy. Being more enthusiastic or letting people know how much I appreciate them and catering it to them specifically, individually, and her therapist helped her realize a lot of what she was going through, which was nice because she essentially said that she forgave me for her reading into essentially the way I am and turning it into a negative as opposed to it just being the way that I am, and in no way a reflection of her or how I felt about her. And I believed her, and I apologize for not making her feel as beautiful as I think she is, and generally not being a more present partner. She also apologized for her behavior after her mom died. She actually admitted she was trying to make me jealous, and when it didn't work, she went temporarily insane. She said she felt like she lost me before her mom died, but because we never talked about it, after her mom died, she started acting out and feeling kind of desperate and lost control. I am so grateful for her honesty. I thought I had been going crazy. Ultimately though, neither one of us has a desire to jump back into a relationship with the other. She had brought it up passively as something down the road and in the future, but when I remained silent, she asked if that was something I was hoping for, and I had to be honest. It wasn't. I love her, but the person I fell in love with doesn't exist anymore. I can't see her the same way, and I am quite frankly not in love with the person she is now. Even with everything she is saying, her previous behavior is hard to let go of, let alone ignore entirely. She agreed with me. What a relief. We love each other, but both feel like we need time away from each other and figuring out who we are, and now we can at least be friends. I thought I lost my best friend, and I thought because of all of this that it was gone forever, but I got my best friend back. We're not best friends anymore in the way we were, but when faced with the alternative, it's almost better, because I missed her friendship more than anything, long before everything fell apart. Anyways, things are positive and there's no hate or animosity. I feel terrible for what I put her through, but as my therapist reminds me, it wasn't intentional. At the end of the day, you are only yourself, and people have a choice to live with it or not. He's helped me a ton. So were either of us the jerk with how things were handled? This OP really had to go through it. He somehow was able to keep a level head through such a painful experience, and on top of that, took accountability for every part that he attributed to himself, and even some things that I don't think necessarily he even needed to take accountability for. He seems very accommodating. I think most people wouldn't be able to handle basically getting ghosted by her, not wanting to talk at all other than the text that she sent basically saying to go away and don't be there when I'm home, and then to get hit with the answer of whether or not they're together with, yes, I thought I made that clear, saying that she thought she made it was clear that they're not together, and then come to find out she's already been seeing someone. That seems pretty obvious that the most likely answer here is the entire time that he was staying out of the house that she was already dating during that time, or with whoever she ended up being with. So when her personality changed, her personality really changed. But if she wanted to do that, she should have just been honest and said, I don't want to waste your time, I want to go explore the world, I want to be with other people, and I don't want to hurt you, so I'm going to break up with you, then do all of that. We'll never know for sure what happened, but from the sounds of it, it was somewhat ambiguous, and maybe that was intentional, so that if things didn't work out with this new guy, she could always come back to the OP. But maybe you see the situation totally differently. Let me know how you interpret it down below, and jerk or not a jerk, and why. My greedy stepmother from China married my father to bring her family over, set up their businesses here. Then she stole my inheritance and my family house. Years later, I found out that my girlfriend's brother was dating my ex-stepmom, who had taken everything from me. So I used that as my opportunity to nuke her political career, expose her cheating, and ruin the lives of all her family that set up businesses here because of my father. Here's what happened. Sorry for the grammar, English is my second language after Chinese. My mom died after giving birth to me, so I never knew her. She looks pretty in pictures. Dad says she was a good woman and I believed him. He was a good dad and raised me by himself with the help of my aunt until I was 11. My aunt has her own kids, which are a few years older than me, but we were all friends growing up and still are, which includes my aunt. Like my mom, my aunt is a good woman. My dad worked crazy long hours to provide for me. He owned his own convenience store. He was a manager and cashier for most of the day and had one other employee as his helper. I was just a kid but would also help at the store after school, sweeping and stocking shelves. For the longest time, my dad's helper was a Chinese guy, but then he had to quit because he had to take care of his ailing parents in China. So my dad replaced him with a white guy who did okay for a while, but then he graduated graduated college and moved on. Finally, my dad hired a Chinese woman to be his helper, and this woman would eventually become his second wife and my stepmom. I will call her Barbara, though of course her name isn't actually Barbara. Barbara was only 15 years older than me, so she was a lot younger than my dad, who was 44, and she was about 26. She also didn't speak the same Chinese dialect at first, which was inconvenient for our convenience store because we lived in a Chinese part of town where most of the customers were Chinese Mandarin, and only once in a while white or black people come in, so her English wasn't such an advantage. Barbara was nice to me at first, so I thought she was a good person. I wasn't even 12 years old yet when they got married and she moved into our house. From what I know about her, her family is quite wealthy in China, and they paid for a nice wedding and they all came to America for it. My dad was the sort of guy to never let anyone pay his way through, so he kept on working like a maniac every day. Once they got married, Barbara changed, at least towards me. She was no longer big sis like she tried to portray herself when she and my dad were dating, where she treated me as a peer, but now she was super strict and controlling. She no longer let me help out around the shop like before. It's not like Cinderella where the mom would force the kid to do all this work, but she did tend to isolate me from my father. Over the next few years, she convinced my dad to sponsor all sorts of her relatives and friends to come over from China to live in America. He would set up these people with businesses because even though my dad wasn't rich, he was very bright and knew how to make money. They would open little restaurants, dry cleaners, cell phone repair shops, things like that. Pretty much all the little foreign mom and pop shops you see in any small town. My dad helped make those things, except the owners were Chinese guys. Even when I was 17, my dad developed lung cancer due to smoking heavily ever since he was 13. He died only 2 years later at 52. When I was a kid, I always had in mind to one day take over my dad's store when he retired. Now that I was 19, I was still too young to sell liquor, but I thought surely Barbara would let me work in the store now that my dad was gone. No such luck. He had one of her adult cousins take over the store, and the guy hired only his own friends and family to work in it. So the store my dad built from nothing was no longer a part of my life. Barbara also had my dad fix his will so that she got almost all of his money, which again, although he wasn't Bill Gates rich, he had several hundreds of thousands of dollars. I didn't really care about the money. Barbara can have it, but it still sucks that she got all his money and her family is already rich. I think she was just using my dad to transport her clan from China to America, but that's just my theory. All the money in the world cannot pay to bring my dad back, but I'd rather have that than cash, but I digress. However, after saying all that, I will admit my dad set aside a small trust for me that was enough to put me through junior college. Also, the minute I turned 18, Barbara threw me out of the house that my dad bought and paid for with his hard work.
This is not a place for you. You go now. Bye-bye.
She owned it because she was his wife, and now that my dad was dead, Barbara could move her new boyfriend into the house in his place. Her new boyfriend was a big fat scumbag from Taiwan, who from what I hear was a big shot mobster in his home country. But in America, he just played mahjong all day and lived off his wife's money in my dad's house. Honestly, I think he was hanging out in America to avoid gang trouble in Asia. Also, I think my stepmom got on with him because he had connections in China and Taiwan, and maybe some fraud is going on. Before I got kicked out of my dad's house, my stepmom used my dad's money to invest in a couple of apartment buildings. I eventually heard that she was renting out rooms to various traffickers, and basically they were bordellos. This was all stuff I found out later, along with the news that she was not only making big money off the rent, but the traffickers were giving her a kickback on the money they earned. I will say this for Barbara. She is a very beautiful woman physically, and it's easy to see why my father was attracted to her. Though, if I think of her not as my stepmom, she personally does nothing for me. She often got men to do what she wanted because she was pretty. I'm also quite certain that she gave them more than eye candy, but aside from one very important case, I cannot prove it. What was that case? Well, I moved in with my nice aunt who sheltered me while I went to college for a degree in computer engineering. My smaller inheritance paid for a couple of years of school. My aunt was nice to me, and even though she was still taking care of her own children, she had one son who already married and had his own family, but 3 daughters who still lived at home and were unmarried. She didn't ask me for rent. Her own husband had passed away long ago, so I got to play man of the house, taking care of the yard and fixing things like cars and computers while I lived there. After a couple of years, I lose touch with Barbara and just concede that she won. I ended up getting a job at a computer hobby store where I soup up computers to make them go fast. It's a good experience, and though the money isn't so great, at least it is some money, and I am starting to make a name for myself in the world, or at least in our small city. And when I say small city, I really do mean small city. It is even small in the sense that Chinese people in that city tend to live all in one part of it and everyone knows one another. Eventually, I meet my own girlfriend, Kay, who is much the same age as me and going to school to be a nurse. After Kay and I start dating for a few months, I start to meet her family. She knows about my living situation, that I live with my aunt, and that I have a mean stepmom who threw me out of my dad's house, but I never said Barbara's real name before. So I meet Kay's family, and she has an older brother, Mike, who is about 26 years old. Mike is Chinese like all of us, but he is very heavily tattooed and has spent some time in prison because he was a banger as a teenager and did that time until his early 20s. He worked for a landscaping company cutting grass and all that. He is what we call in our neighborhood a cowboy, but I don't know how accurate that translates in English to what I'm trying to say he is. Well, anyway, after coming over to Kay's house and seeing him around a couple of times, Mike overhears me answer one of Kay's questions about my stepmom, and Barbara's name comes up. Mike said, "Oh, excuse me, May. Hey, OP, did you say Barbara's name? In my neighborhood, everyone calls their little sister May. So I say, yeah, that's my stepmom. Oh, he tells me, no offense, OP, but I'm smashing your stepmom. No way. So he describes how he does a lot of houses in my dad's old neighborhood, and while my stepmom's boyfriend is with his own friends playing mahjong, he, Mike, comes over and Barbara and him do the deed without any protection because she wants a baby and is now like 36 years old and is wanting to go fast, and her boyfriend has baby batter that is too slow. Evidently, Mike does the deed with all sorts of women in the neighborhood, and outside of it too. He brags about all the whites and black and Mexican ladies that he also landscapes. I haven't really thought about my stepmom other than talking about stuff in the past, so it was interesting hearing what she was up to. I mean, other than doing my girlfriend's brother. Mike tells us that Barbara uses her apartment buildings as a giant cat house where pimps set up their women. Barbara never actually told him this, but he deduced it like an Asian thug version of Sherlock Holmes. He says that a lot of people he knew in prison got put in jail that way. Also, that my stepmom was running for a seat on the city council, playing up the fact that she was a hard-working woman of color, blah blah blah, and had aspirations for even higher office. It's clear that she wanted to make herself a little empire. Kay asked her brother if he would help us put my stepmom in jail. She had her account set up, so it was really hard to prove she actually knew exactly what her tenants were doing in her buildings. But if the buildings were shut down, it would at least hurt Barbara's cash flow and put an end to some of the things these women were going through in these buildings. Mike said that he would have kept his mouth shut because he liked that my stepmom was basically showering him with money so that he could keep giving her the D. But since his little sister was asking for help, he was willing to forego the money. I piped up and even offered to pay him, even though no way could I pay as much as Barbara. He said, it's fine, you don't need to pay me anything, but if you hurt my little sister, I'll cut your gonads off. Deal. So our plan that we came up with was that Mike would set up his cell phone in an out-of-sight place in Barbara's room while they did the deed. Mike didn't care about his reputation in America and had plans to leave the country again anyway and go back to China, as his own father had a business opportunity for him there. The idea of being in a video like this didn't bother him at all. Having spent time in jail and also being a part of gang subculture, he also didn't have any trouble scoring illegal substances, and evidently he did these illegal substances with Barbara all the time in her house. So the day he made this explicit tape at her house, he also made sure to show that Barbara was doing illegal substances. He minimized his role so that it appeared that it was Barbara who scored them and was offering them to him. He did make sure, at my suggestion, to have her say in natural conversation what day and what year it was, and that this was her husband's house who passed away, and that her current boyfriend was playing mahjong at a friend's house. Furthermore, Mike added a special touch where in the throes of doing the deed, he made Barbara denounce her Taiwanese boyfriend as a weakling and a fool, not a real man, that only Mike was capable of satisfying her. Really hair-raising stuff. All of it was in Chinese, but that was okay because the audience would also be in Chinese. Mike made sure that the video clearly showed Barbara's face. The video was obviously not professionally made, so thankfully we did not actually have to see any clear private parts, but it was obvious what was going on in the film. All told, the video was 20 minutes long. We edited out most of the graphic portions because they were unimportant really. When I say we, I mean Mike and me, because of course Kay didn't want to look at her own brother in the act. I didn't care to see Barbara either, and thankfully I didn't really have to see any clear picture of her exposed, though it was obviously her and she was obviously exposed. We shaved the video down to the parts where it was clearly showing Barbara's face, her doing illegal substances, talking about illegal substances and offering them to Mike, her mentioning the date, and that this was her husband's house who passed away. Them in bed for a few seconds doing the deed, and the funny part where she made fun of her Taiwanese boyfriend. The relevant video clip that we made with all of this was slightly less than 10 seconds long. A few days later, Mike went to China to meet with his parents. A week after that, this is what happened. As politics go, candidates often have to make speeches in front of audiences, and Barbara running for a seat in the city council was no different. Nobody really cares about city council meetings except other politicians and the few people who go to such things. Reading up on her quickly, I learned that Barbara was presenting herself as a woman of high character, a business owner who had set up more than a dozen successful businesses in the area for other immigrants. So basically, she was stealing credit for my father's work. But back to boring political meetings. They're definitely a snoozer, but if something interesting happens, such as the politician saying something Hitler would say, someone getting assassinated, or I don't know, an attractive candidate suddenly randomly appearing in an explicit tape for all to see in real time, news travels fast. So on the day Barbara was making her little speech in front of maybe 100 people at the local hotel conference room, the public was invited. Oh look, her boyfriend, the Mahjong King, was there too. And all of Barbara's cousins that my dad had sponsored to come to America and set up businesses for were there too. Nobody took notice of the young guy in dark sunglasses and beanie sitting in the front row holding a backpack. Even more so, because the room was darkened except for the stage, Barbara was going to be the fourth speaker out of maybe 6. While the first speaker made his speech, I silently slid a bazooka Bluetooth speaker out of my backpack and put it near the stage. Such a speaker is about 20 inches tall, 8 diameter, and when set to a maximum can be quite loud. I tested it at home to be sure. Yep, this would do. As I predicted, the level of excitement for the first 3 speakers was as entertaining as listening to Jessica Simpson try to rap. So it really was a trial to wait for Barbara's turn. She finally gets on stage and she starts talking about being a good family woman and so on. I pull out my smartphone and use its projector app along with a homemade projector box I built at work so that it could make a nice big image on the close behind wall. 10 seconds of Barbara telling us where she was, what date it was, how delicious Molly is, what an inferior man her boyfriend is, and
oh God, Mikey. Do it, Mikey.
her actual throes of passion, nice and loud. Thanks, bazooka speaker. The audience was so stunned. I had time to loop the video and play it again. Barbara is standing there with her mouth open, eyes wide. Someone in the crowd yells out in Chinese, "Hey, that's Mike!" Everyone knows Mike, especially a lot of the ladies. Just as the crowd is starting to reach a crescendo, I grab my speaker and projector box, stuff them into my backpack, and slip out the side door where Kay is waiting with her car running. Before I made this getaway, I made sure to yell out, "This is not a place for you, Barbara. You go now. Bye-bye." I then went to Kay's house and we were so happy we got engaged. By that weekend, I was packed up and moving with Kay to stay with her uncle, who lived in a big house near my new school where I am now finishing my degree. Kay is now a full-time registered nurse. She brings in most of the money, but soon I'll play a bigger role too. From what my aunt tells me, Barbara and her boyfriend broke up, and by broke up, I mean she fled the city because he literally wanted to end her. She lost her bid for the city council, obviously. Thanks to an anonymous tip, her bordello apartments were also shut down. Because of Barbara's shame, lots of her relatives who own businesses, thanks to my dad, lost customers, and a few have already gone out of business. The rest are failing fast. My dad's old house fell into foreclosure, and now a white family lives there. They're the only white people on the block, so Godspeed, round eyes. Barbara's explicit clip was turned into a GIF and made the rounds on tons of people's Facebooks before it got deleted because of community crazy guidelines. Mike shared this trailer all over the internet to people he knows, and in our neighborhood, everyone knows one another. Since it was only a few seconds long, lots of people posted it on their Instagrams before it got deleted. Barbara's life is pretty much nuked. The full-length version got posted to various pay sites, but it hasn't leaked to any free streaming services. This is according to Mike. He never misses an opportunity to make some cash. And hey, yo dad, I forgive you for not leaving me that much other than showing me how to be strong and stand up for myself. That was the best inheritance of all. See you in heaven unless this stunt makes me go to hell instead. Love, OP. So, am I the jerk for getting revenge and nuking Barbara's whole life? So before saying anything else, I gotta say I do not agree with taking private pictures of somebody against their knowledge while they're doing this in their home and then sharing those pictures no matter what the situation is. I know they were doing it for the sake of revenge here, but to me that's on a whole different level of not okay. I know that you could argue that both situations consist of taking away that person's decision, but there's something more dehumanizing about that to me than taking somebody's money. That said, do I think that Barbara was a good person? Probably not. The way that this was presented was kind of surprising because it seemed like the OP kind of came to peace about this whole situation because he said that she thought she had won, and then it was only reignited when he found out that his girlfriend's boyfriend was dating his stepmom. If that had never happened, would he ever get revenge at all? It sounds like the answer is no. But from the way he describes it, it sounds like he wasn't even that upset about what Barbara had done up until that point. So from a motivation perspective, it's kind of odd. The only explanation that makes sense is that he was downplaying how much he was hurt by Barbara in order to cope with that reality. And then when he finally sees an opportunity to strike back, he takes that first shot that he gets. And that first shot is calculated, orchestrated, and devastating. It basically ruins her life and what she spent all these years marrying his dad and setting up in order to have for herself and her family that she brought over. This character, Mike, is kind of the wild card of the entire story because without him, none of this would have happened. And the fact that he would even be willing to do this in the first place is kind of surprising, even with the reasoning that he's doing it indirectly for his little sister. Because by doing this, he gives up all the money he's getting from Barbara, and who knows how this could backfire on him. But I guess it didn't matter to him because he was going back to China after all. The way the OP described him was as the Asian thug version of Sherlock Holmes. There was someone that responded to this story that really related to it a lot who said, "Thank you for your story. I hope it's true. I got screwed over pretty hard in my grief when my ex died by his wife, separated. Like you say, all the money in the world can't buy them back, so I did not care about the cash at all when he suddenly passed. He showed me love like I'd always imagined it's supposed to be, and I couldn't have loved him more. I still do. His ex-wife committed perjury, and it seems can still get away with it. It's not right. I would like to see her charged, but I've read it's really hard to prove perjury, and I may need a lawyer, which I can't afford. I do plan to talk to law enforcement, but I get the impression that they won't really care. It feels good to hear that some people don't get away with it. I wish I knew how to make things right, like he was so good at doing." So if you've ever seen a situation like this before, let me know down below, or feel free to submit your story via the link in the description. Also, make sure to subscribe to the second channel because that's where some of my personal stories will be. That's also linked down below in the description. So with all that said in this story, do you think that it was justified or was it going too far? I'm still in the camp that there were a ton of other ways to get revenge that don't involve this type of personal violation, but maybe you see this completely differently. Let me know down below, and jerk or not a jerk, and why.
When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you want some chill music to put on in the background, check out easymode.com. If you like Am I the Jerk, subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.